All right, y'all. Welcome to All Politics of Local America's number one political hip hop radio talk show, broadcasted live every Friday from 6 to 9. Well, listen, y'all. Y'all know this. We're getting close to the last show before the end of the year. This is
This is the last show before the end of the year.
Oh,
Sure is.
so next week is Christmas?
Sure is.
Yeah,
Sure
right,
is.
exactly.
So this is the
Exactly.
last show for the year. Wow.
This is the last show for the year. That's why we're going to have Dr. Kelly
2021
Harris out later.
next time we get down.
Wow.
Yeah, exactly.
All right. Well, listen, this is the last show, and so the mayor's gonna close it out, and the mayor's gonna have
He was trying to bust in the door.
one heck of a guest. He's gonna have, of course, our beloved brother, Dr. Haki Madhubuti. He's gonna be talking about his book tonight, his new book out, along with a number of other things. I mean, we're gonna talk to him about with the mayor, right? The name of the book is Taught by a Woman, and we're going to talk to him about a number of things. This brother's been around for a lot of years, and
Right.
And as you know, Brother Zayid, he's part of the Black Arts movement. You know what I mean?
Yes.
So, I mean, we want to try to delve into some of that. I know that the time we have with them is not long to get into a lot of that, but we're going to try and feed on our brother as much as we can. So that's going to go down in the first hour with the mayor and him. And John, you want to tell me what's coming up in the 7 o'clock hour?
In the 7 o'clock hour, we have Dawn Haynes that's coming in, and she's with Brick City Collective, and she's going to be talking about a lot of the anti-violence work that they are doing. And Zayid actually was very excited about the guest, that not just the anti-violence work that they're doing, but also the work that they're doing in terms of just doing mutual aid work. And so we're going to get into what the concept of mutual aid is. We had a guest on, a few months ago that talked about mutual aid.
Looking for the cord.
But but we're going to get into it more in the 7 o'clock hour. And the 8 o'clock hour, we're going to have a retrospective because it's the last one of the year. It's the last show of the entire year. So
Right.
doing the last show of the entire year, we're going to be like, hey, it's the last show of the year, 2020. It mostly sucked. But what was it like, right? So you look at my scraggly beard because I haven't been to a barber in a while, right? Like I've gotten the whole shave my head thing, so that's good. But 2020,
And
it's a year where my beard actually grew in. Scraggly though,
and
scraggly.
that may have saved your life. Not going to a barber.
Right, exactly. That scraggly beard, but I'm alive.
Right.
I'm alive.
And John, they were just talking about a minute ago, for people who are thinking about going to visit family, they were saying if you have to do that, you definitely want to consider driving and not flying.
Right. Like that's, visiting my parents, right? Like my thing is that I'm hesitant about driving. Right. We had the conversation with moms and she was like, you don't really have to, I know if you don't have to drive down and I'm thinking and I'm like, oh man, and I need to get tested. Am I going to get my results back in time? Right. It's one of those things yes, the holidays are really important. For me, of course, this holiday is especially important. Right. But in terms of the, I want my mama around. I don't want to be the one. Right. There are all these days. Georgia is horrible now. They just passed 500,000 cases. 500,000 cases just in the state of Georgia.
And that's because of that governor.
Yeah, he's like, hey, it's because, and it's from the top down, right? Like the governor's like, hey, it's a party.
Right.
And you go there and you go outside of Atlanta, you go outside of the actual, certain places in Atlanta, they take it seriously. In Atlanta proper, certain places take it seriously. Outside of Atlanta, oh my God. You think it's a party. They're walking up at the fast food restaurant. I can't even go get a coffee. Can't get a coffee from Dunkin' Donuts because people walking up, no mask on or mask all down their nose, breathing the nose hairs all over your coffee. I'm like, man, no. So yeah, man, Georgia got me scared all the way down. Georgia got me scared. It's been a year, but we're gonna be talking about that with Dr. Kelly Harris, Seton Hall University. He's a frequent guest of ours. We have him here, he comes back often, and we thought that it would be fitting to have him here at the end. Zay, do you want to talk more about the 7 o'clock guest? Because I know that you really.
Well, y'all know Dawn. I mean, Dawn is no.
Y'all know Dawn. She needs no introduction.
Dawn is wears so many hats, and has got so much on her plate. And I'm very proud of this young lady. Dawn is the vice president of the Newark Board of Education. Dawn is the treasurer of the mighty Newark Anti-Violence Coalition, and she was tasked recently with heading up and managing what's called the Brick City Peace Collective, a mutual aid vehicle that helps coordinate the different forces doing mutual aid and doing anti-violence work, right? It'll be primarily that she'll be talking about. But she keeps her hands, and she's somebody's mama, she's somebody's wife, and she got 3 babies. You know what I mean? And
so she's like the James Brown of activism. Like she's the hardest working person in activism.
Extremely proud of her. Yes, but we got to deepen our ranks so that the committed amongst us, like the Dawns and like the Keishas and like that, don't get so spread out that we wind up wearing them out. Right. That happens too.
So spread out, there's burnout.
That's right. So we got to take care of our folks, and we got to deepen our ranks on who's real out here to do the things that we need to do. But we got plenty to talk about. She's got plenty to talk about when it comes to what they are doing.
Well, that sounds good, in terms of the entire show. So, hopefully y'all won't run into the 10 o'clock hour tonight. I figured I'd tell y'all that.
That ain't get on yet. She ain't hear that part.
Wow. Wow. Zayid, brother, you just throwing a sister under the bus, man. I'm surprised at you.
I stopped buses, so that ain't no biggie. I shut buses down. That ain't nothing.
Yeah.
That's funny.
So
Zayid's like, I'm an activist. We don't have at time stuff. We gonna be there.
So while we wait on the mayor to come, so we can get the mayor's forum started, why don't we just talk a little bit about, if you will, some of the antics that's going on this week as it relates to the Senate playing this game with Bernie Sanders as it relates to whether or not they want to give a stimulus check to the American public, whether it's 600 or 700 and not 1,200. Right?
Oh, it's gonna be 600. They ain't gonna go up. And it's not real. I mean, it's not like them playing a game with Bernie Sanders. They're playing a game with the American people.
That's right.
It's the Republicans are like, nah, that's too much. And so, like, for me, 70 million people voted for him.
Come on. Show me a Republican or anybody who can live off $600.
They don't care.
In this country. They don't care.
Yeah.
They don't care.
They don't care. We really got to take Georgia. We really do got to take Georgia. And I'm anything but a Democrat, but we really do got to take Georgia because this stuff is, Democracy Now! Reported that over 885,000 people filed for unemployment just within the last week. 885,000 people.
Yeah.
Wow.
And that's not the largest weekly number since we've been under the pandemic. But in the last 3 months, it was the largest, right? And next month, all of the controls of the rent controls and mortgage controls are due to expire.
Well, that's right.
Right?
That's right. December,
And
the day right after Christmas.
Yeah, and it's we gotta and can you imagine if all these folks who are hanging on by a thread by these little checks that we're talking about from the government get put out in the street, the United States will look like it looked back in 1929, in 1930.
That's going to be some serious losses.
Yeah, so there are degrees of depression, but we haven't hit rock bottom yet. But if they remove those supports from the people at this particular juncture, and listen, the protest wave that will emerge ain't gonna just be about police brutality, right? It's gonna be something else, right? So we got to turn it up. We were in the People's Organization for Progress meeting the other night, talking about we got to turn it up for economic justice, regardless of who's in the White House, because we can't let the Democrats in their cozy relationship with the 1%. They have their own relationship with the 1%. A lot of them are out of touch, right? We can't let them get comfortable just because we all rallied around them to beat Trump. No, there's a national agenda. We're in a crisis. It's got to be what the people need, not what they want to appease them.
But I think that has to happen, Zayid. I think that there has to be an uprising, right? And I think that that's really the only way that things are going to come back into balance in America, right? I think one, you're right. We got to win in Georgia in order to neutralize McConnell, right? Mm-hmm. We got to do that. Two, after that happens, right? We've got to keep the pressure on Biden, right, and Harris, and that entire gang down in Washington to do what's right, because it's right not only by Black folks, but do right because it's right, and do right by this country. Right. But at the end of the day, Black folk, from our perspective, listen, man, I don't really see white folks saving us. I think that we got to save ourselves.
We have to. They ain't never saved us.
Right. So I think that we've got to be talking about what is it that we're going to do for ourselves, right? And then what is it that we're going to put to this American government and say, look, the time for having study groups and all of this to talk about reparations is over. We know y'all owe us, right? It's time to start talking about paying us.
That's right.
And I think that along those lines, we have to never lose sight that we need to keep registering people to vote. This is a very divided country, right? Absolutely. This is like, and Donna, you were saying?
Yeah, and what we also need to be mindful right here in the state of New Jersey, which has been sitting on our legislators' desks, is a housing bill that will prepare us coming out of COVID. And there was a COVID relief bill that was around foreclosures, and for rental. So it looks at both aspects of it, and to say, hey, if you're an owner, these are the provisions. If you're a renter, these are the provisions, and so on and so forth. But it passed the Assembly and it's stuck in the Senate. Now, had this bill passed, it would have been the first in the U.S. to pass. Written by, and Assemblywoman Timberlake has been on here to talk about it, but it's still stuck in the Senate. And something as common sense as housing, because yes, it's awesome that we are having so many organizations coming together and they're providing people with food, but what do you put food when you don't have a house? There's no shelves or anything to put. So
Donna, you're saying that like if this Senate bill doesn't pass, that there's going to be a high level of homelessness and people evicted in New Jersey. Oh, yeah. I mean, we're not talking about Republicans and we're not talking about Republicans in DC. We're talking about the majority, because both the Assembly and both the Assembly and the Senate are democratically run, right?
In leadership, yes, in both.
The majority in both the Assembly and the Senate is democratic leadership.
Yes.
And you're saying that there's a bill that's being held up in the Senate, and that Senate bill that's being held up is probably going to lead to high rates of homelessness.
Right. And listen, and Ed, laws your field. The eviction filings have not stopped filing. They're piling up and piling up. The only thing holding those evictions from proceeding is Governor Murphy's protection and governors in other states. But we got a bird's eye view some month ago when the governor's protection in Texas was lifted. And the sheriff was going and evicting people. And I remember in one interview, a reporter asked the gentleman, what are you going to do with your stuff that was sitting out on the curb? He's like, why am I worried about my stuff? I don't have a place to lay my head. And then the sheriff said to another person, oh, you're a senior citizen. Oh, we'll give you 24 hours. So we got a bird's eye view, and it was national news. It was on CNN, MSNBC about what happened when the governor's protection. And in fact, Joe Madison actually talked about it earlier. As Zayid said, what happens on December 31st when all of these protections are lifted? One reason that it may, Governor Murphy has continued to extend it, and we're a cold state. So I'm sure if his practice continue, he's probably going to extend it further. But the fact that some states have started lifting these protections and the evictions are, I want to say, and I don't know the number, but there are over 1,000, there are thousands of eviction notices waiting to go through the process in New Jersey. They are just piling up, piling up. Landlords are and we understand that there's on both sides. Landlords are not receiving their rent, which means that they can't pay their mortgage, and it's a very challenging thing. So when this when Murphy's protection executive order is lifted, the courts are going to be overwhelmed. Landlord tenant court, I mean, which in Essex County, in Essex Vicinage, as is already overwhelmed when it comes to landlord tenant. But once this protection is lifted, it's going to be crazy. And we've already had Maria on who giving you testimonies of where landlords have improperly evicted people. But wait till these floodgates open. It's going to be horrific, from the foreclosure side and to the rent and to the tenant side. It's going to be horrible. And it's because here's a bill that Assemblywoman Timberlake thought about back in June and said, let's prepare and get the process started so that this inevitable is going to happen. People have lost their jobs to no fault of their own. And if you want to see something trickle down, this is trickle down. Somebody loses their job, they can't pay their rent. The owner can't pay the mortgage, and that's the trickle down that's happening right now, and it's going to be wait till all 50 states come in, and it's going to be a crisis. And
if the state of New Jersey can't act, right? If the state of New Jersey can't act, then how do we think the federal government's going to act? Which is we're a democratically controlled state that voted blue, and we can't pass this.
Right.
But here's the thing, though. Let's go back to 2008 when we had another crisis of a similar kind, the Great Recession, right? What did national leadership do? They
bail out the banks.
Out the banks.
Right. When they should have bailed out the people. So people still owed mortgages.
The people. Oh, absolutely.
Right. People still owed the mortgages. Right.
And be clear.
Military actions all over the world. Pull it back. And put it back into this economy.
And be clear. If it has to go to a bailing out instead of the people, what's the lessons learned? Bank of America was one bank that was bailed out, and within weeks after getting bailed out, they still laid people off. So what is the lessons that we learned from 2008? How do we go forward? And again, they have Governor Murphy himself said to the legislature, pass this bill. Congressman Payne has come out and spoke in support of this bill. And that different states are doing different things. And maybe perhaps the new year we should bring Maria back on I think you said Maria was at the table part of transition, but Maria has been at the front line.
We're talking about that's Maria Nunes from the Ironbound Community Corporation.
And that's something that we'll definitely get into in the third hour too, when we talk about the year. Okay. And we wrap up the year. But we have our guest on. We have our very special guest on. I mean, and I've been reading about you and reading works that you have written since I was in high school. When talking about the things that you published and the importance on our community, right? Like the destruction of Black boys, when you were bringing that up before a lot of people started bringing that up, right? And so we are honored to have you on today. Ed, do you want to do the more formal introduction?
Yeah.
Because I know that you have a lot of things to say, and I could not do justice.
Well, obviously we want to welcome our beloved elder brother Haki Madhubuti to the Mayor's Forum. The mayor's running a little late, but he should be joining us shortly. So we're absolutely honored to have this brother who has a tremendous amount of wealth. I mean, we only have a short time, but we have a lot we want to talk to him about, and a lot of stuff we want to try to put to this brother. But I think we would be remiss if we didn't ask him as one of our leaders, is it okay for us to speak?
Oh, absolutely. Yeah.
Well, thank you, my brother.
Listen to Sister Dinah X, and she was right on it. I think that Yeah, go ahead and speak. I'm sorry. Go ahead. Mhm.
Well, we thank you, my brother. We understand in our culture, we recognize when we've got our elder brothers on deck, it is proper for us to ask that question, brother. So we thank you, and normally, brother, because we are a political hip hop radio show, we try to bring it, from not only from a black perspective, but from a hip hop perspective, and so one of the important things that are going on now in our community, as we started the show talking about just saying, we're looking at what the Senate is doing, and then we're looking at what's about to occur in our community the day after Christmas, right? If this occurs, we got, as Brother Zayid just said, people are holding on by a strand.
Right.
And so if that be the case, what's going to happen after that? I see the mayor just joined, so Brother Mayor, Brother Haki is on, and so we just started opening up the show, talking a little bit about what's going on in the Senate right now with them holding up the funding, in terms of releasing that, and what's going to happen the day after Christmas, right? And so I'll let you respond to that, Brother Haki, if you want to.
I think that Sister Donex was right on time. Greetings, Mayor Baraka. It's important for us to realize that we are our answer, that no one is going to look after us. And what you all have done and continue to do in Newark, as our ancestor, Amelia Baraka say, New Ark, have done is critical. It's very important. But you are right. It's going to hit hard and heavy after the first of the year. Brothers and sisters all over the country who are now already out of work, those who are not out of work will not be able to get any more aid from state governments or federal governments in terms of their work. And the total national lockdown in terms of people being able to keep their apartments, homes, it's going to be disastrous. Disastrous. And here, this is an effect of a criminal government run by a criminal 45 and his family, all who have profited enormously. What came out today that Jared, the son-in-law, basically have been stealing hundreds of millions of dollars in special accounts that they're going to walk away from the White House staggeringly rich, if not already. So yes, we're in trouble. And that's why independent Black institutions are important. That's why we have got to continue to impact on public education. That's why it's important that essentially people, anti-ignorance starts with books, start with reading. Our people have got to move back to where our homes become mini learning institutions. I can walk into your home right now and tell you exactly where you are culturally. As I walk in your home, is it clean? Walk into your home, what's on the walls? Images that reflect us, our people, our heritage, the best of us. What's on your bookshelf? If you have a bookshelf, what are you reading? What are you studying? Then I look at the music you're listening to. Yes, hip hop is on it. But, we're talking about righteous hip hop. You see, we're talking about hip hop that essentially does not denigrate women. We're talking about Black music, period. We're not talking about booty call music, all right? We go to your streaming on your movies. What are you looking at tonight? Okay, what's the best are you looking at? Not the movies that are wrapped up in a brown paper bag. What are you looking at that's going to elevate our people? And then you go to the children's room. What's on their walls? Darth Vader, Mickey Mouse, Donald Duck. And you wonder why we're confused. We're confused because we don't know who we are. We're confused because we don't love ourselves. First and foremost, we got to start with self. And I think that this podcast and what you all doing here is really critical because why? You control it. You make the decisions. And that's very important because we are now living in a time where decision makers run it. And most of us make choices within the parameters of other people's decisions. And so by you doing this podcast and by you putting out our word becomes critical. And by having a mayor, Baraka, it is lineage. And I know, just like you all, what Newark had to go to get to Marion, what the family had to go through. I remember when the mayor was a baby, okay? And we didn't struggle back in Congress of African People with Amiri Baraka and Amina Baraka. So it's important. And so those of us who are still alive and still cooking and still working, we have not given up. Here in Chicago, we're going through what you all are going through. We own a half a block here in Chicago. We got 3 schools that are still functioning, but they're functioning, you know, hybrid, okay? Dealing with 600 students a day. Third World Press is still going strong, and we're going to stay alive. You know, as long as I'm alive, we're going to stay alive. Even though we've changed leadership, we're going to stay alive. So my point always is we have to do what is in the best interest of people of African ancestry. Do what's in the best interest of our people, not forsaking other children. And let me be very clear about this. All children we must care for. It doesn't matter what race, what culture, what mess children up are basically their parents, okay? And we see that most certainly in terms of 45's family. Okay, I just don't want to mention his name. 45's family. They're all messed up. Crooks, grifters, you see. And so what we have to understand is that our future remains in our hands. And we've got to stay strong. We've got to stay focused. We've got to stay loving and caring each other. But first and foremost, we've got to continue to educate ourselves each and every day about what is happening. Because you're looking at social media, looking at mass media, you're looking at the banks, you're looking at the insurance companies, and one of your commentators was actually correct. After 08, 09, which almost put us out of business, 08, 09, basically the banks were bailed out, the insurance companies were bailed out, the mortgage companies were bailed out, and the big, people with serious money got money. Just like when Trump came in and gave a $1.7 trillion tax break. So what we must demand at one level, yes, the Congress must pass relief for ordinary, serious workers out here, men and women. But at the same time, we need the student loan debts wiped out. Not $50,000. Should be wiped out. Just like you gave the rich 1.7 trillion, we need to have Biden wipe out that student debt. One, wipe out medical debt. These are 2 debts that we should not have in a country that's supposed to be, well, if they say it's the richest country in the world, it's the richest country in the world for the richest people in the world, not for us, you see. But we wipe out that student debt, wipe out the medical debt. That gives us a head start as we move into the next new year. So that's you all know how I feel, all right? And it's not easy, but we got to get up every day, including Sundays, and work. But at the same time, especially for Black men, we have to understand self-care. I'm 78, knocking the hell out of 79. I'll be 79 in February. It's very important for Black men, and I'm not dismissing Black women. My new book is on women, talk about women. But it's important that Black men understand we must do self-care too. In terms of exercise, meditation, eating properly, get off all this junk food. It's not even food, just all this junk that we consume in our bodies. Moderate alcohol intake, if at all. Okay, my wife says don't do this. Well, I'm a vegan. Okay, if it runs for me, I'm not gonna eat it. But the point is that we, as Black men, especially get around my age, prostate problems, heart problems, everything. So you got to take self-care. Walk. Walking is one of the best exercise for men my age. But cardiovascular, meditation, yoga, all this is very important. So that's it. You let me run on and on.
Sir, and it's good to see you. I haven't seen you since my little brother was first inaugurated as mayor. It's just good to see you. But as a couple of us are COVID survivors, and COVID only sharpened the point that you just made. I lost my best friend just yesterday to COVID-19. Right, and both of us have been living relatively clean and upright lives. But when those of us who are out here on this battlefield have to understand the whole question of so-called stress management.
That's it, right? You're right.
Mm-hmm. And I know I've managed other people's stress for years, but it took me going through this change and some other related changes to realize that I wasn't doing enough of that. And I'm really, it's as a getting ready to get punched in the face at 60, I had to really make some adjustments to really figure that out. And I'm still trying to figure that out. So it's really important. It's the little bit that I did do had a small hand in my survival of COVID-19, 19. But a lot of us just ain't make it.
You're right, but I would strongly suggest investigate plant-based diet, plant-based nutrition.
Getting close.
It's very important because we need to get away from this artificial so-called food that we're eating. You see, I mean, especially with all this chicken, with the hormones and the chickens and all this stuff. You got factory manufactured meat. Okay, we need to really get us back close to plant-based as possible. Clean water as possible, as much as possible. And I know that Newark was having some problems with it, lead in the water, but I know that Mayor Baraka is working on that. But that's all over the country. It's not just Newark. It's Flint. It's Chicago.
Right.
It's all over the country, especially in Black communities. It's all over the country. And so, as long as we love and care for each other, you see what I'm saying? There's no Black man or Black woman can do anything to me that's going to turn me against Black people. Nothing. What Europeans have done to us, what white people have done to us, snatching us from a continent, sprinkling us around the world to build a world for them, you see, just the beginning. I'm this color because white men raped my great-great-great-great-grandmama, okay? And continue that action throughout our lives here. And so we can't turn our own people. So these young gangbangers out here, they only do what they've been taught to do. And we're located in the middle of the Black community. We got to deal with them every day, just like the mayor and you all have to do, all right? But what's missing in their lives is love. What's missing in their lives is security. What's missing in their lives is knowledge based around their contribution to world civilization, you see. And what they're living in and what we're living in, you have two economies. You have an underground economy. That's what these brothers are dealing with.
That's right. That's right.
And the overground economy is much more disastrous and painful to us in the final analysis than the underground economy. All right?
By design, yes, sir.
That's absolutely by design. You see,
I want to try to bring the mayor in, and I have a question for you with regards to Haki Madhubuti. I was first introduced to his works when I was in college, and it kind of transformed my experience as a young man. My question for the mayor is, what has been were you moved also at that young age by Haki Madhubuti and what he was writing when he was talking about Black men obsolete, single, and dangerous? I think he was bringing that up before a lot of people were bringing up issues that were very specifically hitting our community. And the second part of that, because I'm also curious about this, Mayor, is how do you also deal with self-care in those ways? Because you get hit all the time, right? There are all these pressures that you're under. Pressures we don't even know about, but you're always underneath them. How would you give us some advice about that too?
Yeah, I think all of us at that age when we were coming up in the 80s and 90s, trying to figure out who we were and get involved in activism. I think Haki's book was very, very instrumental. Black Men Obsolete, Dangerous. That book, it was being passed around at Howard University in our circles. So absolutely. And, I do what I can, in terms of eating right and, working out and exercise as much as I can, people can see me on Instagram, trying to stay fit and stay healthy. You have to do that. And then, in terms of your spiritual health, emotional health, just trying to be around, positive people and positive vibes and positive ideas and not, drown yourself in this kind of negativity that can easily get you to succumb to it, right? So that's
Mayor Barack, I just want to follow up because I think at the beginning of COVID, I remember you like a movie short coming on specifically about your self-care. And I know for me, it was very poignant because you specifically talk about you got up in the morning, you prayed, you went to the gym. And if I'm not correct, did that come out like early in
I think we
2020,
lost him
sir?
there.
We lost him. Yeah,
So
This is a car connection problem with the
yeah.
greatest.
yeah. So why don't we pick up, with Brother Haki with his new book, right? And we'll wait for the man to come back. Well, go ahead.
Yeah.
So
So, Matt, I just wanted to follow up because I think was it early this year when that movie short came out about you, about self-care, and you were very poignant to say, I get up in the morning, I pray, I go to the gym, and I do that as a ritual, and that because I do that, I can do everything
That's
else.
true. Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. And just the part that was left out is just trying to be around positive people, people who not sycophants, but people who fundamentally agree with the things that you're talking about and in search for the same thing that you're in search for, to encourage and reinforce what you're doing, because it's necessary to be around people like that. That's going to show you genuine love and care. That's it, and not like be in a position where you have to struggle with everybody you come across, because you're going to have to struggle with folks. You want to be able to at least have a space where that's not, the daily undertaking.
Well, one of the most powerful institutions, the most powerful institution in the Black community is the Black church. And that's national and even international. But what people don't realize also that one of the most powerful businesses in the Black community is Black church. Okay. And where the Black church go, we go, whether it's good or bad or indifferent. And so I think that it's important that we find a spiritual path, a spiritual home that is good, right, just, and going in the right direction, and love our people. And this is so important. And, Mayor Baraka's correct in the sense that he has so many forces pulling against him. I remember when he was first elected, I wrote him about a 2 or 3 page letter. I don't know if he ever got it or not.
Yes, sir.
But
it's on my wall in the office.
Oh, thank you, sir. Just offer some advice, because he is not. This is what we were working for. This is what we were working for. The whole family, the whole struggle to get brothers like him into positions of power and influence.
Right.
Who will not betray us. This is critical, you see. And one of the reasons I put Amina Baraka on the front of the book is because of my love for the Baraka family and what his father and Amina meant to me, you see. And people who knew Amina Baraka understood that he went through ups and downs himself, and that we fought, we loved, we cared for each other, and so forth. I remember the last time, now before the memorial, I was there for his last birthday. I flew in for that because he was my brother, you see, regardless of what happened. And we didn't speak for about 5 or 6 years at one point. But that was political, you see, and it was backwards. But the key point is we came back together and we published one of his last books. We published Razor, okay, which is still in print. And then again, when I went to the memorial, I told people we're going to honor our brother, and we did with Brilliant Flame, which is in print, which is brothers and sisters from around the country sent in essays, poetry, plays to honor this iconic figure, you see. And at the same time, I don't know if Ras Baraka knows about this, but we're talking to Amina now about getting her poetry back out. And so it's important. And for your information, I have new leadership at the press. I mean, I knew I had to move aside. So we have, Michael Samanga, Mayor. Michael Samanga is the publisher, and Lasana Kazimbi is the executive director. And we're now talking to another sister who will come in and kind of form a trilogy in terms of the leadership of Third World Press, the Third World Press Foundation, as we move forward. So independent Black institutions are critical and very important. But when you run a city, you run a city for everybody. Everybody. And this is why I said that all children matter. You see, we cannot make the same mistake, or we cannot live our lives like 45 lives his life, talking smack. We got to fortify these institutions, make sure our schools are working fine for all children, and continue on. So, Talk About Women is really 50 years of my dealing with Black women and others throughout this journey. And so I got all these women on the front of the book, women inside the front cover, all right, women on the back cover, and women inside. Right? And so when we talk about the women that influenced me, Gwendolyn Brooks, Margaret Burroughs. Now, Margaret Burroughs, Gwendolyn Brooks was the first Black woman to pose a prize. Margaret Burroughs, she and her husband built the first Black museum in the nation, the DuSable Museum. Barbara Ann Sizemore, you all may not know her, but Dr. Barbara Ann Sizemore was the first Black superintendent of Washington, D.C. And she stayed until she got too Black and they got rid of her. Then I got my wife, Dr. Carol D. Lee, and Mama Safisha Madhubuti. And I'm nice just say my wife is one of the most brilliant people I've been around. She is now the president-elect of the Academy of the National Academy of Education, which she takes over next year. Shirley Graham Du Bois, all right? And of course, W.B. Du Bois was our hero for all of us. And then Ida B. Wells, Mary McLeod Bethune, Rosa Parks, Katherine Dunham, Angela Davis. Now, Angela Davis is still with us, still going strong. Winnie Mandela, I'm just going to read the top. Zora Neale Hurston, Queen Mother Moore. Now, Queen Mother Moore was one of the first to come out and deal with the whole question of reparations. That was Queen Mother Moore. Harriet Tubman, Margaret Walker Alexander, fine poet down from Jackson, Mississippi. Grace Lee Boggs, Geneva Smitherman, she's still with her, Dr. Smitherman, Shirley Chisholm, and Mari Evans. And then, of course, you go down toward the bottom of the book, we got Amina Baraka. Amina Baraka is in between June Jordan, Janet Sankey was one of our workers, Lorraine Hansberry, and Marimba Ani and Marie Brown. So I'm just going to read one short piece that kind of gives you some insight to why I did the book. It's called Why Women? Taught by Women is my acknowledgement and thank you to over half of the world's population who remain too often property, raped, honor killed, diminished, enslaved, lynched, dismissed, excluded, lied to, abused, sexualized, sex trafficked, devalued, demeaned, executed, imprisoned, forgotten, forced into unwanted marriages, miseducated, undereducated, beheaded, and bodily disfigured, all motivating me to be pro-girl and woman, which requires serious listening and specialized learning, advanced thought, care, action, and language that highlighted Black music, poetry, and visual art, which I received from my mother, a woman who worked and died in the sex trade of the 1950s. Just as capitalism, white supremacy, Black ignorance, enslavement, and anti-religious thought killed her, I, her only son, am able today and tomorrow to act and state with finality. Stop. And again, thank you to Black women and the world of women for saving my life. And so this is what I tried to do in the book. And of course, there's a poem in the book for Mayor Baraka's sister and our dear sister, Waishani. I'm not going to read the poem, but it's for the Baraka family. And I'm just going to read one section, Waishani. So old folks say that the most courageous and committed people are tested incessantly, given the most intricate mountains to forge, the deepest forest fire to quiet, the harshest hellholes to navigate. This journey does not inspire struggle, just unlimited offers of another path, to reconsider opposing injustice, to stop working for the children of strangers, to cease cleaning the wounds of the battered, to abandon poetry. Shani was a wonderful sister, you see, and her not being with us diminished all of us. But the Baraka family has stayed strong and steady and have done the work that we all try to do in other parts of the country. Okay. And my gift to Black women is taught by women.
Man, what do you think about that? What you just heard him read? Why Shani, man? I read it a couple of times. I want to hear what you think, man, because it got to me a couple of times, brother.
I think it's wonderful, brother. And I didn't get a chance to read the whole thing, but the part that you just read is very true, by the way. So it is very clear. The clarity on it is right on the money, because that's what the design of this thing is to do, to discourage you from doing what you're supposed to do. I mean, it gets to a point even where, people are more interested in being around you, the fame of it, other than just the struggle itself. So, I mean, it's so that part of what you said is just 100. I know so many children and I talk about this all the time. So many children that are my age and younger, some a little older, of my father and mother's comrades, revolutionaries, people who struggle, activists who have been completely emotionally and psychologically harmed by growing up in the movement. And some of them are diametrically opposed to all of it.
That's right.
Because they blame it.
That's right.
For their bad relationships that they have with their family, with their parents, not being able to do the things that everybody else do. They blame their parents' activities on that and the movement itself. So some of them are backward down. Some of them are, and then there's a few. There's a lot that are conscious, that are still at it. So I don't want to paint that picture, but there are a lot of folks who are on the other side of it, or just beat down, and they don't want to have nothing to do with it. So definitely.
That's true.
Yeah, I think that one of the things for me, man, when I read the piece and I talked to the mayor about us getting you on the show, I thought that when I read Shani, I thought that having known, the mayor and Mitty and Shani and all of them, and knowing the parents who were like our parents in the community, I think that one of the things is, and I've said this to the mayor, Brother Haki, I've said to him often that, I know that when he sit with us, we all know him, we all hang out and everything, but the responsibility that this brother carry, because and we all do, we carry it with him. Those of us who are conscious and understand his position and understand his family's price that they paid for all of us. I think that we understand that that selling out is not part of his DNA, right? And that we get offended.
Not an option.
Right. We get offended when people even suggest that or talk about him in that way, because, he don't need us to defend him, but we almost feel like we want to be night riders sometime, right? Because of the price that his parents had to pay. Remember, Amiri had a PhD, right? And this brother could have taken his wife and his children and moved to Short Hills or Livingston like everybody else and left all the other Black folk in Newark, right? And just drove through Newark and went in and just been a professor somewhere. He could have done that, but he didn't do that. His kids became, the revolutionaries and now the leaders for us. And so I think that, when I read the Shani piece a number of times, it is a very true to point piece in terms of the level of struggle. And the mayor's right. A lot of kids who had parents who have done that, some of them are just not walking in that direction. But I thank God that the mayor and his brothers and his family is still doing it. And that's why, I think that, when we, at least when I'm talking to the brother, I think the thing I'm impressed about is that he still got his right mind after, some of the stuff that he's going through now. And I understand what the leadership is. And so I appreciate Brother Haki Madhubuti, you writing this piece and honoring his piece and his mother and his family. And I'm saying that while the brother's on with us, but you know, like Brother Zayid said, selling out is not an option for Mayor Baraka. That's not an option.
But Brother Riley, if you don't know who you are, anybody can name you. And so the whole question of self-knowledge brings self-confidence. And that what we have in our community, I spoke about this a little bit earlier, we have too many ignorant people talking about how ignorant other people are, you see. So their starting point is not a starting point of knowledge. It's a starting point of what I heard on the streets, what I read in social media, what JB told me down the street, and so forth, et cetera, et cetera. But when you get to be at the level of Mayor Baraka, is that you have to deal with facts. You have to deal with knowledge. You have to deal with people who are coming at you from all sides, friends and foe. And you have to talk and deal with all of them all the time, you see. And so for him to have you and other brothers and sisters there holding this back up, helping him, you know, because his spine is tested every day, 24/7, every day, you see. And people don't realize what leadership involves often, you know, especially now during COVID-19 and this economic downturn that this 45 caused, you see. And it's interesting, Mayor and others, that when these clowns, this Republican, so-called Republican people leave and Democrats take over, they're taking over just as Barack Obama took over in 08, 09. It's a mess. And they're trying now to make it a greater mess. I don't know if you heard about what happened today, but McConnell is trying to essentially put into the package that they want to roll out for poor people and others.
Stimulus package.
Right. They're trying to essentially say that the federal government cannot buy any more bonds and stocks and so forth, which have been keeping the stock market afloat. The government has. The government is the last resort of doing any good and holding these people accountable. All right. And so it's rough. It's not easy, you see, at all. And I'm sorry, go ahead.
I would say then just to go in a slightly different direction, but the same spirit. That the question of folks being around him that have his back is important, right? Because when folks, you know, some of us reach that status with our history like that, with our integrity like that, with our vision and commitment like that, the other side can't wait for you to make the kind of misstep to make your fall as ungracious and unfriendly and untowardly as possible. Right, so you know, we do need to have each other's back, and we certainly need to have his back at that level. I mean, we've got folks in prison from back in the days when y'all were in your primes, really bringing it. Right, some folks still in prison from that period.
Correct.
Right, because nobody wants to see enough of us stand up that straight. So when somebody emerges amongst us like that, we definitely do need to have their backs, and they need to do more to bring more up. So they're not alone out here.
That's true. You're right, brother. You're right. But those people who will have his back must be producers themselves. You see, that your voices become larger when you create. All right. I'm not talking not necessarily just in the arts, but when you create institutional structures that help and aid our people and direct our people. But also you have a greater voice because you have created these institutional structures, whether they're businesses, community centers, it doesn't matter. And one of the real problems that we have in our community, people don't realize that some of the greatest revolutionaries that come through our community are the brothers and sisters that make a payroll every 2 weeks. All right? Make a payroll every 2 weeks. That will turn you gray, all right? We've been going over 50 years here in Chicago with our institutions, with our schools and with the press and so forth and with the foundation. And it's about a $13-14 million budget. It's not a lot of money in the real world. It's not a lot of money. But in the Black community, it is. All right. And so with the faculty and staff that we deal with, the people at the press we deal with each and every day, I cannot pay them with a poem. All right. You have to have institutional structures that bring in resources. and understand that one of the greatest resources in this country, in terms of keeping a lot of these Neanderthals going, is basically taxes. When 45 gave that $1.7 trillion tax to the very rich and the banks and insurance companies and et cetera, that was a lifesaver. But here you aiding the rich who's already rich. And this is why I say we got to wipe out this student loan debt. We got to wipe out this medical debt to poor people and working class people and middle class people. That should be the first move for Biden when he gets in. It can be an executive order, wipe it out.
I would like to, ask the mayor a question about a question, right? Like, as in, Mayor, like Haki Madhubuti is like legend, been here for years, always, older people giving us like wisdom. I mean, I sat back and I've been listening most of the time. If there's a question that you can ask him right now, and I'm sure you probably have talked, right? But there's a question that you can ask him that would help you as mayor, you as a person. Like, what question would you ask him right now?
Well, I don't particularly, like have a question. Just, I think it's important what he's doing is and still publishing. That's important. So I don't have any like question, but I think the publishing is important around Black media because we don't have as much as we did before. In fact, dealing with the press every day that I have to deal with the press. There is no press agency that sees the world the way I see it, or supports, or understands even the positions that we're coming from. You might have some liberal media that believes that they do, but they don't. And in some instances, they're probably just as racist as some of these right wing folks, and the kind of undertones that they use. Even when we were doing good with the COVID, they come out, the title of it would be "Who Would Have Guessed Newark?" Right. So those kinds of things like that is, is really tongue in cheek, or this kind of the kind of press that we get is we always have to be defensive because of that. And our people are getting information from them. And now that it is the social media world, they're getting information from fringe sites and fringe people that they're sharing over and over again. And the information is not even supported by facts.
Right.
And they don't even know who these people are or what their underlining proposition or intentions are. So we do need more press. So I like to at least hear about how, we had the Pittsburgh Courier, the Amsterdam News is still out there, but not as big as it once were. All these papers, the Defender, everything used to be out.
Right.
We don't have these kind of papers anymore. Not even Ebony and Jet
right.
Are out there like that. And Essence is not what it used to be.
It's not owned by Black people anymore.
Right.
Right. Our secret was we bought the property that we operate in. I can't begin to tell you how valuable that was in terms of making that decision. We bought a Catholic parish, which is, I say half a block, it's a half a block. The school, the church, the rectory, all right? So we own that. We sold the church because we don't really have need for it, and that helped us to finance the property. This is about 25, 30 years ago. And interesting enough, Mayor, the current first Black cardinal, who just made a cardinal about 2 weeks ago. Dang, what's his name? Forgot his name already. Winton Gregory. He was Bishop Winton Gregory. He's in D.C., but he was in Chicago. And when I went to the archdiocese to try to get the property, after they continued to butcher my name, they said no, you can't get it. So I came back home and started calling some of my Catholic friends and said, who actually makes the decisions on the south side of Chicago? And they said, Bishop Gregory. And he's Black. So I called his office, leaving, he never get back to me. Then I called his office and left Donnell Lee. And then I got a call back from his office, and the woman, the secretary, said, "Are you the poet?" I said, "Yes, I am, but I need to speak to Bishop Gregory. It's an emergency." She said, "Got 15 minutes 2 weeks from now." So I told my wife, "Watch me now." So I went out there, tied up and everything, went out there. And 15 minutes turned into 2 hours because he had heard about us, and I knew some of his priest friends, black priests. And when I left, I had a letter from him to Cardinal Bernardine stating that we not shall only be on the list to buy the property, but at the top of the list. But just like everybody, they're going to try to cheat us in terms of want to charge $1 million for the property. It's not worth $1 million. We knew that. So we had our real estate friends go and do a appraisal, et cetera, et cetera. So anyway, to make a long story short, we got the property. And that has been really very valuable to us. We just had to redo the parking lot, put an elevator in the school because of state laws, put a new roof on the school, as well as getting now solar on the schools and so forth. We had to borrow $1 million. So how many black men and women out of the 60s who have created institutional structures can go to a bank and say, we need to borrow $1 million? All right. And all I'm saying is that that's debt, but it's debt for our people. Okay. And when 08, 09 came in, it almost put Third World Press out. That's why we became a 501c3. It's Third World Press Foundation, even though we still publish under Third World Press. It's Third World Press Foundation. Now, we had to become a 501c3 in order to get our file from under all these taxes and stuff, from especially the federal government.
Now, I know we're coming up toward the end of this, and that was just really, I like the connection because I know that when you were talking about the importance of owning the property, we had Source of Knowledge bookstore on last week that also talked about the importance of actually owning the property, and for Mayor Baraka, you have been a champion in having residents own property. What is that? Is there a connection between property ownership and liberation and what you are attempting to do in Newark? Are you still there?
Yeah, I'm here. It's getting a bad connection. I'm
okay,
here.
Cool. So that just struck me when you talk about property ownership and owning your own property. It struck me that has been an agenda of yours since your first term. What is there about the nature of property ownership in a city and forms of liberation?
Well, I mean, I think that's clear. I mean, you own the land. That's important. The Republic of New Africa used to say "free the land," right? So, at the end of the day, you have to own the actual land, the property. We cry about gentrification, but can't nobody gentrify anything you own. That's number one. Number two, land is wealth. I mean, property is wealth. Its power is passed down generations. I was trying to get people to understand that money is not the power, but wealth is. Like, money is a tool to help you get wealth, right? We on Instagram holding money up is like holding up a hammer or a screwdriver, right? Or a saw. People buy and sell money on the open market, right? You buy international money, you buy it. That's what you bought. That's what bonding and insurance rates and the Fed is about. That's what they're arguing about in Congress, because they print money.
Right.
They can print as much money as they want to, right? How that affects the market is something different, but they print money. The thing that we need is the property. You need the land. You need to own it, right? If you own it, you can get money from the property, right? So, and that's what we have to understand. And then we have to own our institutions, and as was said, own our institutions, own the press, own the media, own all of those agencies of production. You have to own those things so that you can put out what you think is right and necessary for your people. You got to put that stuff out. We are responding to what other people are doing because we don't own things ourselves. We don't own our own schools or own the curriculum. So we're responding to the curriculum that somebody else wrote in schools that they control, right? And that's the problem. Even when we monopolize and control the school board, It gives us an opportunity, but still the apparatus that are inside of it, the economics of it, like the books
Right.
that we're buying, the curriculum that we're using, who sanctions it, all of that stuff is important. And so it's a struggle. That's why ownership is important, man. I'm trying to get them to own the block, not just hang them in front of other people's houses.
Right.
Right.
You know, you don't want to move when the police say move, buy the property.
Talking about this is my turf, and you don't even own the turf, you know. But land is the only thing that nobody nowhere is making any more of. Land, you see, and the mayor's correct. Is that ownership? But see, one cannot move toward ownership unless you own yourself first, and that's why self-knowledge is critical. It's critical.
Absolutely, and we definitely Haki Madhubuti, we got to have you back, right? Because like you have been a force in all of our lives, like since growing up, right? Like a positive intellectual force in our lives, doing that. We just lost the mayor, but we're coming toward the end of the show, and we wanted to give you. We then want to give you the last word. We're also going to ask you a question, and you can wrap that question up and the last word that we're giving you. And we're All Politics Are Local, America's number one political hip hop radio talk show. And so I believe this is your first time on the program.
It is.
And so who is your favorite hip hop artist, individual or group?
Wait, Jonathan, you ain't let him say what he was going to say, but go ahead. I wanted to hear his last words. Go ahead.
Okay. Oh, no, but those words, and then just wrap it in together, right?
Okay. I'm Public Enemy, but before Public Enemy, there was Gil Scott-Heron. All right?
That's right.
Art of conversational rap.
And before Gil Scott-Heron, there was Oscar Brown Jr.
Oh, straight out of Chicago. Yes, sir.
So I'm telling you, and we published a book by Gil Scott-Heron, and Oscar Brown and I were very close. And so this whole rap hip hop is not new. It comes from my generation. My first album was Rapping and Reading. Right? And so if you allow me, I just want to end up with reading a poem. Okay. And the poem is Liberation Narratives. Any people who are control of their own cultural imperatives, they will have a liberation narrative. Okay. 1, it may be a man's world, yet it's women who write music that navigate the harmony that grows children, drives learning, preparing knives for the cutting of green beans and lies, while dodging genocide and rape. As men who run the world, bathed in the power of extreme illusion, overuse collateral damage, and deficit language to justify it's a man's world. 2, best advice to men, marry women smarter than you. Let them know it. Number 3, my mother was prettier than imagination soaked in honey flavored with hot water and lemon. Her heart was there too. She was a short poem. Dead at 34, buried without flowers, notation, or truthful stories. She challenged men walking on her like she was a used thread mill years before they were invented. I have her eyes. I see damage everywhere. I become a stop sign. 4, Janet liked girls and told them so. Robert liked boys and kept it a secret. Both grew into teenagers, still liking girls and still liking boys. Each kept their desires to themselves. In the 21st century, parts of the world began to mature and finally understood why Janet loved women and Robert loved men. They were born that way. Enough said. 5, if poetry is to have meaning, it must mean something. More than metaphor and simile, more than tree talk and looking for gigs, more than competition and unrhymed free verse, sears to the bone of ink comprehension, surely to land a poet a Guggenheim or MacArthur Genius Grant. Artists should not expect from readers, listeners, and observers fairness, objectivity, or deep knowledge of wordplay or interpretive ideas of paint or jumping notes. Often a smile will do. And yes, to buy books and visuals and music will help. Saying yes to children may get you into heaven. Saying no to war builds character and conscience. Giving 10% of what you earn to the homeless will aid in your sleeping a full night. Hopefully, to awaken, creating healthier poems, prose, pictures, and critical perceptions of the potential of the letter P beyond politics, potholes, profiteers, poverty, pimp juice, patriots, partisans, and playboys of the Western world. 6, if you don't know who you are, anybody can name you. And 7, if the world loses elephants, dolphins, polar bears, frogs, trees, the ability of the majority to do good, if the world loses clean water, prayer, and meditation in all languages, love across borders, honest vegans and vegetarians, a mother's love, a father's caring, children dancing to knowledge and colors, artists not lying for money, privilege, or fame, if the world loses books, newspapers, clear thinkers, practical doers, poets, promising futures for the great majority, if the world loses rainforests, a world vocabulary that accents yes and possibilities rather than no, you can't do that. If the world loses the great apes, schools, giraffes, salmon, the coral reefs, insects, worms, organic farmers, compost, green tea, workers who use their hands to build and repair stuff, North and South poles, teachers, people of faith, engineers, wheatgrass, carrot juice, oatmeal, and 7-grain bread. If the world loses you and water, yes, precious you and the daily taste of life, it finally means that we lost butterflies yesterday and failed our children. Thank you very much.
Oh, thank you. And we still have the do we still have the mayor on? No, we do not. So thank you so much for coming out. Definitely, we definitely have to have you back.
Honor the serial poem. Carry on the tradition.
And professor, is it professor or
It's professor? Yes, professor.
It's professor. And I know it's time for you to go. And Ed's gonna yell at me yesterday, but you have to come because I know we've all been devastated by, even though the news is old, but just to see another woman who could be next to Breonna go through what she did in Chicago. And I know Mayor Lightfoot is trying to get in front of it. Right. And there's a lot going on that even if we just can come back and just talk about Chicago, although I can only come to Chicago like on July 4th because it's too cold there, but just the history that comes out of Chicago is beyond words. But thank you for what you have shared with us today. And we need like 2 more shows, and the book is in his hand, taught by women. Thank you.
Well, thank you. And stay strong. Look, don't give up. I know it's difficult.
Never give up.
Just stay on it. And anytime I can help, just give me a call. Stay strong now.
All right, my brother. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much. This is All Politics Are Local, America's number one political hip hop radio talk show. We are transitioning quickly into our next guest. Our next guest is familiar to me. She is, she's so awesome. We're gonna give her 2 introductions. First, she is a vice president of the Newark Board of Education, institution near and dear to my heart. She has been there. She's been on our show before, both as a candidate for office, but as Brother Zayid said, she holds many hats. So she's someone who does excellent work on the Newark Board of Education. I very much respect all of the work that she does. I'm full disclosure, I'm a teacher, so I'm not just kissing up. This is very sincere. So thank you so much for the work that you do, for the dedication that you show, and for the way in which you are consistently putting kids first. But Zayid is going to give you another special introduction.
Oh, so that wasn't the introduction?
No, she deserves more. You just was talking about women and women full respect.
So
we can't just give out one introduction.
So Sister Dawn,
more than one.
So Sister Dawn, that was just him kissing up. Let's be clear what that was.
That was not.
You ain't gonna have no kissing up on me.
That was very, very sincere. Because let's check it out. Let's be real. Cammie Anderson was on this show. She was my direct boss. Like she could just go to her. I was like, oh well, why'd you do this? Why'd you do that? Why didn't you just say this before? You were lying. Are you lying again? No, that's on record. That's on tape. I don't kiss up. I don't gotta kiss up.
We don't do that on these microphones.
and she got the business twice. We had some serious questions. I support her coming back on the show. We were treated her with respect. We absolutely treated her with respect, but we asked some questions there. So, yes, Dawn, welcome. This is not a kiss up. This is very sincere.
Thank you.
Thank you.
For
I didn't say that to her. She could have fired me like the next day. But I got a union. But she could have made my life a little more difficult the next day. So this ain't no kissing up. Thank you.
And I know, Dawn, we didn't get to you weren't here with us last week. So let me start off by saying I'm sending my sincere condolences. So I don't think you were with us when we did the tribute to Tave last week.
Thank you. I appreciate that, Miss Donna.
So,
all right, go ahead, Zayid.
We're going to have Zayid give the second introduction because the first one, Ed, you decide. No,
Go ahead, Zayid. We're gonna mute John's mic in a minute, but go ahead, Zayid.
Wow, look at it. I like when he goes buck wild. Now, this is one of my babies. You want to appreciate Dawn Hayes? Walk with us on the street. How people talk this mess. I want you to see this daughter on the streets of Newark, trying to help people, turning it up to stop the violence. Right? She ain't got to do that. She could transition herself into a totally bourgeois life if she wanted to, just by virtue of some of the responsibilities that she has. But this wife, this mother of three, this daughter of Newark, commits herself to us where we're at, regardless of how poorly or how badly we're doing. On my proud daughter, right? The treasurer of the mighty Newark Anti-Violence Coalition is so beloved and trusted by our mayor that she was also tasked with managing what is now known as the Brick City Peace Collective. And of course, we're going to give her the mic to let her blow up what all that is about, right? So that's the punch in the face introduction.
Well, I am grateful for the hug introduction as well as the punch in the face introduction. Both of those were heartfelt. I appreciate that. Yeah, thank you. Thank you guys for having me on first and foremost. You know, this platform, I'm grateful for. All Politics Are Local is a staple in our community and it's heard nationwide, right? When we were doing our travels in this nonviolence work and we were in Ohio, the brothers over there were just completely excited that we had, you know, this platform where people are keeping it 100 and calling people on their stuff. So I am absolutely grateful to be a part of. As Baba mentioned, I am now currently sitting as the manager of the Brick City Peace Collective. And Mayor Baraka, in his infinite wisdom, he said, you know, we have all of these different organizations doing this work. Come to the table. Come to the table together and let's do some strategies and come up with a way to get rid of the violence that's in our community, ultimately freeing ourselves, right? Living in Newark, we know we up against a lot of things, but one of them shouldn't be each other. And we have some magnificent partners, both educational institutes, as far as Brick Education goes, and Newark Board of Education is at the table, which is always interesting because that's usually like taboo land, but hey, we all working together. We have our hospitals at the table, as well as all our street organizations. And I saved them for last simply because how important their input is. Because the police, they're at the table as well. They can't do what our Newark Street Academy, our Newark Anti-Violence Coalition, or our members of West Ward Victims Outreach, they can't do the same thing that organization can do. So we sit at this table bi-weekly and strategize on ways to join peace within Newark, right? We have a campaign right now, Peace is a Choice. So these conversations that we're having with our young people, and there's also a peace agreement attached to it, is reaching out to our homicide victims' families, letting them know that they're not in this city by themselves. What can we do to assist? What can the mayor's office do? We have a lot of resources at our disposal. And the problem is enough people either don't know about it or they're not getting that affectionate warmness that they need to navigate through the systems that are in place. What else? There's a lot going on and I'm truly grateful for it. So let's talk.
Well, one of the things, I want to say real real clearly that, I appreciate your work, Sister Dawn. I think that, I mean, I look at people sometime from afar, right? I don't always look at them up close. I look at them from afar sometime. And I've been watching your work for quite a while, Sister. And I want to say thank you to you and appreciate that, because it's not just you. I see you, it's your family, and one of the things I was just saying a moment ago to Brother Haki Madhubuti, about Mayor Baraka, and the fact that, Amiri and Amina, having brought their children along in that struggle. And I see the same with you, your children not having a choice to learn what's really happening in our community for and to Black people. So I appreciate that. But the question I've got to you in reference to all of the organizations in the city of Newark, um, how is that going? Because as working with our people, because that's why Miri said during the first ever congressional Black political conference, he invited people to come together, unity without uniformity. How is that going? Trying to get our brothers and sisters here in Newark to unite.
Well, being as though we're with the Office of Violence Prevention, which is kind of unheard of in the state of New Jersey, or actually in the country, where having our people work together, knowing that there's a bigger cause, that's one of the things that kind of give me leverage. And then relationship building and letting everybody know that's sitting at the table, just because you're a doctor don't mean you're more or less knowledgeable on this work than the person who is considered a reformed gang member, right? Like, everybody that's sitting at this table is appreciated equally. And that alone sets the tone for, I guess, what's accepted or what's expected to happen. And it's always interesting when we're having those hard-hitting conversations, like, all right, we have a diversionary team. For the police, their angle is really to police, right? So to be sitting at the table where there's people that are saying, hey, before it gets to your hands, what are we going to do to prevent it? Because sitting at the feet of Amamu and Sister Amina, knowing that we're our keepers first and foremost, that's where all of the organizations come into play. Like, listen, one hand has to wash the other, and the other hand has to know what this hand is doing in order for us to pass off this information of success. And I mean, it becomes interesting at times, and it's really the relationship building conversations, and having people that are really key in that type of work, like My Brother's Keeper or Equal Justice USA. Those are organizations that do capacity building, and they do like the skeletal work that's happening. So actually right now we're building the plane and driving at the same time, which makes it that much more interesting and fun, if I must say so.
So what it sounds like you're doing is pretty fascinating. I don't know. I'm not sure if I understand it. You basically the organization that you're chairing right now, the Brick City Collective, is it?
Peace Collective, yes, sir.
The Brick City Peace Collective, right? Basically, what's going on right now is there are a lot of different people at the table,
yes, sir,
trying to bring about peace. So there are former gang members, there are members of the police, there are people in the mayor's office, there are people who are part of from the Newark Anti-Violence Coalition. So there are different people who represent different aspects of life who get around the table and do what?
Not only do we strategize, so I don't want to limit the participation of our members. There's 17 different organizations that's a part of it. So all of the mayor's initiatives of decreasing the violence, like Newark Street Academy, that's the school that's designated for our students that Board of Education couldn't deal with, or Brick Academy couldn't deal with. Mayor created an entire school designated for our students that haven't been enrolled in school. They give them a stipend and they get them prepared for the test to take.
Oh, wow.
The GED test. And that school, it's doing amazing work, right? So once that entity is sitting at the table, along with, let's say, Newark Board of Education, as well as Brick Education, now the conversation looks different because it's not fragmented entities. Now it's these are the students of Newark that we're dealing with. So when a student, like, for example, we have a student that we're dealing with, he's kind of aged out of what he's dealing with, but he's caught up in the streets. So there's so many different people sitting at that table that's able to help, whether it's with mental services, mental health issues, whether there's mentoring that needs to take place, whether it's some type of redirection that this young man needs in the event that he gets locked up. Now we have a door where we can actually visit him inside of the facility to do more hands-on redirection. So we have, yes, sir, I'm sorry.
No, continue.
So we have, you know, a lot of different strategies that we're working on, right? So we have a data team that's a part of it, and that's our hospitals, the hospital and the police. They collect the data of how many homicides we have, how many juvenile situations we're dealing with, domestic violence, like all of the things that we're catering to try to drive the numbers down. So it's not just like, oh, the police show up on a scene for a domestic violence. No, now we're talking about social workers. We're talking about de-escalating whatever the drama is that's causing them to fight.
So this is like so when you're saying that you're driving the bus and creating it at the same time, or flying the plane and creating it at the same time, you are speaking about what you're just actually doing. You're getting people together, but you're not quite sure where this will go, but you've got all the people together, so you know that there are pieces that will work.
Yes, you know, I do know where it's gonna go. It's going to go to the success of our community and the freedom of what we're dealing with here in Newark, and knowing how hands-on we have to be with our students, being on Newark Board of Education, knowing how hands-on we have to be within our community with the Newark Anti-Violence Coalition and organizations that's like that. Like, no, we pretty clear on where we got to go.
But the ways in getting there, though, that's really where all this like amazing stuff is going to happen, because you might know where the end goal is, but in terms of that day to day, you've just got a really smart, dedicated people who are around the table doing a lot of problem solving and figuring out how to make things better.
Yes, sir. And it's really outside of the box. Like, there's best practices in other places that have violence prevention offices, but none of them can say that their mayor designated or reallocated funds for an entire building for us, and where a majority of those funds will go to programming. Not too many people around America can talk about, you know, how the CCRB is actually one of the vocal points on our reimagining police team, right? Like, a lot of the things that are in place now is really just connecting the dots and executing it to the best of our ability.
And that's also an example of what other folks are calling and trying to figure out, that when they use the language, defund the police.
Mm-hmm. Right, we're not defunding.
We're already doing it.
Right.
Strategic planning, yes.
That's what it looks like.
Right. So we're not defunding, we're just reallocating, because although we respect the police, you know, they're at the table with us, and you'll be surprised the transparency that this collective has allowed our members to have. Like, where we're able to have those conversations, like, look, we need help with X, Y, and Z. Okay, well, we have the hub who does all type of art therapy. Okay, if he's gotten locked up and he's been released, here, have this mom sign this form, and we're gonna have him a mentor here. He's gonna be here on this day. He's gonna be getting picked up by this person on this day. He's gonna be doing trust trainings at the Shiny Baraka. Like, there's a whole plateau of resources that we offer, and it's not just, you know, narrowed to jail, suspension, prison. Like, it's,
and Dawn, that's why, how refreshing is it for that officer that I have seen officers here in my city where they have seen perhaps a young man, and because there wasn't options there, it was this or that. Then by the time it got to that, it was like, I tried to stop it, but now this officer can kind of say, hey, this person needs music, this person needs some drama, this person, you know, it's like, can you see the officers getting like a sense of reviving, you know, because now they have a little bit of solutions rather than the green monster or something like that? Or do you?
Yes, ma'am. Mm-hmm. Yes, ma'am. One thing, and I try not to, you know, divulge too much that goes on in the meetings, but the officers are excited to know that there's first responders that look like the people that they're trying to assist, right? And building those relationships. So the rookies, for the most part, like, who don't know us, they're going to get to know us. And it's going to be in a respectful exchange of, you're here to do a job and we're here to do a job. Crowd control look different when it's people that's trying to help to the situation that don't have on a uniform, right? Well, not a uniform per se, like a police officer's uniform. And one of the things that has really helped scope some of our work is the amount of the homeless population with our teenagers and, you know, living in abandoned houses and stuff. Okay, so now we know we have a goal. How are we gonna fix that, right? We know the homeless population in the city of Newark has risen over the last few years, but specifically, how do we help our juveniles that are also caught up in the juvenile justice system, that's also caught up in gangs or caught up in whatever else? Perhaps these are some of the reasons that's causing it, and let's figure out how we can at least get him safe shelter that's aged out or that's not old enough to go to like the Covenant House. There's nothing in between there. So now we have city resources that should be able to help us with that.
That has to be a breath of fresh air, because I never forget hearing a mother who was also a teacher, who realized early that her child didn't learn the traditional way, but he really learned well to music. And so her changing the style of teaching, you know, so that it could be to music and to rhythm, and how it just changed. And, you know, this young man is now a college graduate. And it's just that, you know, just if you have a class of 32 persons, it's good to know that you have 32 persons and not trying to teach a class to perhaps the slowest learner, or I'm just using the class as an example, that we have to look at people individually and realize the root of some of the causes of the trouble. I remember working in the court, and Ed, you can probably you can help me with this, but for the little time I did work in criminal, when they were about to sentence, it was that pre-sentencing paper that takes them back, that almost says, you know, why did so and so kill, and then it kind of helps the judge make a decision as to the sentencing. You know, like, this person, how much weight do we give to perhaps knowledge? And that piece of paper is always amazing to me, because it really, the person who's filling out that paper has to go back and really do the research to see, how did we get all the way here? And if it had been thought about way back then, maybe we would not be here.
How do we redirect, right? So like we have Newark Community Solutions on our team as well, and they deal firsthand with the court system. And you know, it's really an exciting time just in our history, and to know that these creative and innovative things are happening here in the city of Newark. I mean, we definitely setting the stage for greatness. And I just always pray for good partners and asking people to continue to support us. And I really mean most of the stuff I post on social media. Like, when the last time you yelled out your window, "I love you," or support? So like, I see the work that you're doing. Be great in everything that you're trying to do. You know, we have some really terrific people in our city. And then when you learn about the data in our city, like, most of the crime is done by 1% of the people. So let's figure out what's going on with that 1% and try to redirect it.
Now, can you repeat that and tell us when you first realized that, what you thought? Like, most of the crime is considered by less than 1% of the people?
Yes. So that's one thing, like, the collective is really driven on, is data and data points. And, you know, the term is thrown around, but data is just information. And a lot of us may not be privy to the information, which is what the collective is about. No, everybody needs to know what we're dealing with. Everyone needs to know how they can help with dealing with 1% of the crime. I mean, 1% of the people that's doing the crime. No, 99% of the crime is being done by 1% of the people. So we've seen like a uptick in shooting, and when you're looking at it from the numbers, from the data points, it's in the same areas. There's some places in Newark that have never seen a shooting, right? And when you look at it, it's majority of the same places, and you look at it as family history, and a lot of it is, we want to just say it's gang related, but some of it is like generational beefs, and really trying to get to the root of it in a way that isn't written in a book.
Dawn, I put this act up, the Breathe Act. Are you familiar with that? if not, snatch that out, because that's an act being worked on at the federal legislation. That if you back it back, is probably a lot of the work that you're doing, right here in Newark. And I know that it's probably going to take local level for it to really get passed. It's a great ambition that they have at the federal level, but I think it's going to be implemented at local levels way before it's implemented federally. That's just my thought.
It's implemented. It's being pushed by the Movement for Black Lives. Right? It's a federal omnibus bill that encompasses a range of the things that we're talking about and that we're doing, and from police reform on down.
Yeah, I think that in Newark we have, I want to say, an advantage because of the great work that Baba Zayid and NCAP is doing. Simply because there's some type of sanction that the police are aware they can go under, not just internal affairs. So I think that this act is much needed, because other police need to be on call. Like, they need to understand, like, no, there's certain ways that you must behave, especially when dealing with our issues. We have enough trauma that we're dealing with. We have enough that we have to worry about versus the police that are supposed to be here for service.
Now, you talked also about when you were talking about the data, you were talking about there you can pinpoint like less than 1% of the population doing 99% of the crime. You also talked about like neighborhoods, right? And that it's the same neighborhoods that are hit over and over again. What are some of the things that you've already implemented or already done or put on the table and to deal with what's happening with those particular numbers?
So our original space, we had a catchment area that we were targeting, and it was from, I'm sure everybody on this call is familiar with Newark. So it's from Osborne Terrace down to a little past Milford, and from Avon Avenue over to Hawthorne Avenue. And strategies were put in place, like we're trying to make sure that the places are well lit, that the abandoned homes look different. Even if they're abandoned, they don't have to look abandoned. Making sure that we did listening campaigns where we blocked off the traffic and had conversations with the people that are out there and let them know the resources that's available and how they can get in contact with us for different situations. I will tell you, it is working. The South Ward last year, numbers of shootings look a lot different than they do this year. Like, the numbers have risen in the West Ward and in the Central, but not so much in the ward, the area that we were concentrating on. So that, making sure that it's well lit, doing surveys in the community, talking to the business owners, really expressing to them how important it is for their areas to be lit, letting them know how PSENG have programs that will help with making sure that their area is well lit, trying to concentrate on cameras, encouraging people to get cameras for their businesses, because all of this helps, encouraging our with the stolen cars. There was a whole campaign based on why you shouldn't leave your car keys in the vehicle. That was something that Brick City Peace Collective helped with as well. In addition, we were targeting domestic violence and how we can assist in that nature as well. So there's a few initiatives that I'm proud to say that after our year of being in the South Ward in that area, there is a change. And if you want any store in that area, you're gonna see our Brick City Peace Collective flyer and information, even in the precinct.
Oh, it sounds pretty awesome, and I think it's something that's going, in my opinion, is going to be a model program that people are going to come and say, come out and train and teach us how to do what you're successfully doing, because it's something that you're doing from the ground up, and that's important because you're educating the people who are affected most by the circumstances that are going on. So I commend you, and I remember early on, one of my bosses used to say, "Common sense is not common." So something that seems so practical may not be as practical, every day, especially when people are going to and fro and just trying to, make it, pay their rent and do everything. Sometimes we just really need to stop and say, hey, this is how you can do this. This is how this can help. We got this. And that really makes a difference. So thank you.
You're welcome. And driving peace into our and back into our community and having those tough conversations. Like, we understand that, you know, a lot of the violence and stuff that's happening is our family, our cousins, our nephews, and their or our students, or, you know, students that just haven't been redirected into a different position. I think that now where we're trying to do this piece is a choice campaign. Like, no, choose to be a peaceful person. Choose to find that space that have otherwise been buried within, right? And start really appreciating what we have here in the city of Newark, because there's people that's paying attention and there's people that's waiting for us to not appreciate it so that they can take it. And
listen, Sis Dawn, you better say that again, because while we sitting here complaining, somebody's saying, go ahead, let's tear that block up so we can go in there and make that block our own. People purposely run down our communities and come back and reclaim them. And you better say that often, and say it. You can't say it enough, because people don't understand that we sit here and say negative, because our community, and I look at all of these Black and brown communities that are perfectly located where everybody wants to be, near a train station, near a metropolitan city, you know, your Newarks, your Oranges, your near airport, and people will just allow us to drive into it, and before you know it, they'll come back and rebuild it back up, and you can't even live above the third floor store. It's ridiculous.
And that's why we have to speak like
and that's how gentrification works.
And let people know about the programs and stuff that's available, right? Because the city do offer a lot of things. It's just really about getting the information out and being kind enough to one another to have those conversations, right? Being genuine enough with the circumstances and just having conversations with one another and really wanting for our brothers and sisters what we want for ourselves. And that should be everybody's driving force. Like, I want to live comfortable. I don't want to worry about my car getting stolen while I'm trying to let it warm up to take these kids. I don't want to worry about that. I'm worried about COVID. I don't want to worry about my car.
You know what I used to say? My mother, on Central Place, 2 blocks long. And I remember, like, my mother, my aunt, and us living in a community. And if my mother was at work and my Aunt Virginia was at home, I remember, like, right at the end of the school year, my Aunt Virginia would come with like 12 camp applications, and she would come by everybody's house. Like, y'all couldn't get to the meeting. Here's the camp applications. They got to be in by such and such. And if you can't get it in, just get it back to me and I'll take it back. So there was a sense of community that even though everybody on the block couldn't get there was somebody who stood instead for everybody on the block to make sure that the information was disseminated. And that's what I hear that you're saying. We're getting back to those basics.
Yes, ma'am. And we have things like the People's Assembly that do informational sessions that also gives out information. And I think in the time that we're in, we don't even have room for negativity, not towards one another anyway. I think that at this point in our struggle within our city, we need to respect our leader, stand behind him or beside him, and really work out our kinks together, because if nobody else paying attention to what's going on in the world, we all we got. And I say that more than enough. We are all we got.
So Sister Dawn, are the, you know, those folks who are committing all of the crime, that 1%, are they listening to these organizations that are speaking to them?
Believe it or not, good brother Edward, yes, we have had conversations that don't look like it. Yes, it's working. Yes, it's working. It's not an easy conversation to have, and it's one that goes with trust. It's one that goes with relationships, right? Whether it's relationships with those that have higher up authority in our street organizations, or the little pups that just need direction or somebody to tell them, hey, well, listen, you dropped out. Let me help you get into school. If he's in school for a long enough time, that means he's not committing the atrocities that we're worried about, right? Or the young girls who need that. You had a baby young, cool, no problem. Let me teach you some parenting skills so you at least know how to deal with it when the stress hit the hardest. Even boyfriend and girlfriend relationships where the violence is happening at. Most times it's not that they don't want to be together. The problem is she may want him to stop hitting her, and guess what? He may want her to stop hitting him. So now it's conversations of let's talk about keeping your hands to yourself and how y'all can have a healthy relationship. And these are holistic ways of actually getting to our people. Is really putting that village mindset back into Newark.
And what about opportunities, right? So, because one of the things is you can talk to people about, stopping, bad behavior, but what about providing opportunities for some of these young people, right? Like jobs, like training, like different opportunities like that. Is that something that's a part of the Peace Collective?
Yes, sir. Most certainly is. One of the things that we are fortunate to have is the city at our disposal. So our workforce development office is working with us as well. So we're so much is happening because of COVID, but that don't stop us from having job fairs. That don't stop us from getting these things in place. So when people are prepared with training or making sure their resume is built, making sure that they have their IDs, just making sure the things that they need is ready for them to have in the event that, like today, I got an email from someone that's at Audible. Dawn, do you have somebody for Audible? Absolutely. Do you mind that he got tattoos on his face? No problem.
Nice.
Okay.
Yeah, that's what we're talking about, right? Because remember, a lot of that stuff, when you talk about young people, some of the decisions they make are made from a group perspective, right? In other words, I'm going to do what the group is doing.
Yes, sir.
And then, of course, once I get an opportunity to get outside of the group, I began to see, what it looks like from a different perspective. And oftentimes, Sister Dawn, that has to do with exposure, right? And so, if what you all have created is giving these young people who are committing this kind of crime and violence and in our city opportunities because they think about it. Some of these kids have never even been off the block, right? And so for them, if they get an opportunity to go somewhere else or see something else, see a different opportunity, I recall when Sister Soldier was working for Puff, she used to take young brothers and sisters from Harlem up to a camp.
That was a good program.
Right.
Yes.
And most of the young brothers and sisters, Sister Dawn, have never left the block, never left Harlem. And when they got out and saw another way of living, another way of acting, and they were around different groups of people, they went back with a new vision, a new attitude of wanting to do better for themselves. And a lot of that has to do with exposure.
Yes, sir. One of the people that I watch extremely closely is Miss Erica Ford, and she has violence prevention office inside of New York, and hers is called Life Camp, and that's one of the things that they do as well. So I'm looking to copy that model too, because taking them out of this environment, and believe it or not, taking them out of this environment to detox, right? Like detox mentally, spiritually, as well as physically off of some of the opioids that some of our young people are addicted to. And then having those connections of, hey, I have somebody that I can call to say, I need a bed. Is that possible? And knowing that the results is yes, because this is the mayor's initiative for his city. So that always puts us in a better position.
You have been getting shout outs on the chat. Marcus Sibley from the New Jersey NAACP said he's looking forward to getting down with the Brick City Peace Collective, and he acknowledged the importance of those strategies with trying to change the environment and challenge neighborhoods. The great Principal Kafele said that the Dawn Haynes is a great asset to the Board of Education. I just wanted you to get a taste of the shout out that you're getting, the vibe that you're creating as our listeners are paying attention to what you're doing.
And Dawn, look at you multitasking. I see you on the Facebook Live too. Look at you multitasking, Dawn.
I tell you, man, Sister Donna, some nights I don't know how I do it, because I'll be cooking dinner, sitting on a Board of Education call, and writing my notes to the Brick City Peace Collective.
All at the same time.
All at the same time.
All at the same time.
I'm going to get a new comment, and I see a Dawn comment.
I love the work that you were doing and the stuff that you were doing on an everyday level, right? And there are a lot of conversations that are being had all over the country And I know that there's some that are coming from academia and there's some that are coming from activists. But you are doing the work on the ground. And what I want to ask you about is there are a lot of people who are saying it's not about defund the police, it's abolish the police. Then there are people who are trying to say that there should be no police. Police should be abolished, and they're pushing out, suggestions of abolish the police. Is that useful to you in the work that you do? Is that ever a goal? Like, what do you think about that concept, given what you were doing?
I would say this with a clear mind and a clear heart. The police have a job to do. Our job is to prevent the police from having to intervene with us. We should be able to control, police our own, talk to our own, navigate through the system without them having to become a part of that system that's designed for what it's designed for. Right? It's a system of hierarchy. It's a system of white supremacy. My objective is to avoid our people from even having to go in that direction. As far as defunding them, no, we can reallocate money, as Mayor Baraka so eloquently has done, right? 11 million go a long way for organizations like the Newark Anti-Violence Coalition, who hasn't gotten paid ever to do this work and been out here for 11 years.
I was talking more specifically about the rhetoric of abolish the police. Is that useful rhetoric? Is that useful, even as a policy of getting rid of the police, useful to what you are doing?
No. Again, they have a role. Like they have a position to play as the police. Just historically, how our police departments have been created, the mindset that is still lingering around. They have work to do to fix their people that took on that job and that role and that responsibility, but to defund them, knowing that. And I'm
not using the fund. And I'm not using the fund in the way that you're using it in terms of reallocate funds, right? I'm not using it in that way. I mean, some people are saying when they say abolish, they mean abolish, right?
Right.
And I've been having these conversations back and forth, right? Like, and as Brother Zayid said in the beginning, what you're doing is technically like what people, when they talk about defund the police, they often talk about just reallocating money from the military aspect of the police in terms of just the, whether it be the militarized weapons, whether it be the using them for all these different calls, and just reallocating it to things that you are doing right now. So that's like defund the police. But there are people who are like, no, not defund, abolish. And so I'm asking you about that, given the work that you do. These are actually a lot of debates that we have all the time, right? Like, I coach debate, teach, and all the other stuff. And these are actual, like, serious debates young people are having. And so probably a lot of people might be listening to your answer to get some level of guidance, or at least some level of perspective on abolish, which is being seriously argued by many people, adults, like active. I don't know activists, but like, some people who are activists, some people who are saying that, right? Like, versus what you're doing, which is reallocate funds and focus on ways where you need the police less.
I'm gonna say no. I don't want it to be abolished, and here's why. I know police officers that bring home a check for about $4,000 every 2 weeks. I want our children to understand that this is a lucrative job for them. It's a very good career path that they can go in. So to want to abolish it, knowing that there's a way that our people can come up from it, as long as they have the whole community mindset in place, I just wouldn't say abolish it without something else in place. Now, police in our own can couple with our police department. And I think Newark is, let me tell you why I feel that way. Because Newark is at a different place, right? We've been through our rebellion. We've been through, okay, police, put your hands on us and this is what's going to happen, right? We've been through there. And now we're at a different place where after they fix some of their still internal issues based on that whole white supremacy thought process, our police is different than a lot of people that's screaming abolish the police in places that they haven't had that chance of the federal investigations that happen here, or them having the voice of a CCRB, or having a revolutionary mayor that's like, no, this is not okay within our city. So I think that to abolish it wouldn't do us well. Plus I got police officers in my family, so I understand it from a different perspective as well. But no, I'm not gonna say abolish it. I'm just saying we can police our own just as well. But I think a little different.
No, and thank you, because I think that it's really important to really talk to people who are doing the work every day, and you're a person who's doing the work every day. right? Like there are people who are going to be alive because of work you did, because of work that you did and are doing, and work that a lot of people like you who are working on these commissions are doing, that a lot of people who are criticizing aren't necessarily doing.
Yeah, and criticism is I put a post up the other day, like some things that I'm not going to take with me into 2021 is caring about how other people feel about me. Because this work that we're doing, you can't take on negative criticism, especially if it's not coming from a place of how do we build, or how do we move forward in what we're doing. If this isn't working, then what do we need to do to make the next thing work? This is some, like I said, we're in a really interesting time here in our great city.
And here's the thing, right? John, when they talk about abolish the police, they're not talking about getting rid of the police, right? I think that
no. Abolish means abolish. Defund is different. The activists who are like abolish mean get rid of it. There's an entire philosophy behind it. It's a bit about, it is a belief that we don't need the state to, they will talk about it. I've been in these conversations, right? And these conversations are, we don't necessarily need the police. We can police our own. And the institution is inherently racist, and it will never be fixed. You can never reform it. And so there's an entire way of thinking behind it. But rest and believe, brother, they mean abolish.
They mean abolish.
They say abolish. They mean abolish. Defund is different. Defund is different. But abolish, there are brothers and sisters out there who are saying abolish. They mean it. So defund is different. A lot of people say defund, and they mean programs like Sister Dawn is doing. There was a Politico article with Ras Baraka on it, like when a lot of this first talk was being talked about. They had to change the title of the Politico article. We've used it in debate before. The first article that came out was like Mayor Ras Baraka is calling defund the police a bourgeois tactic, right? But he was talking about abolish. He was like, when people want to get rid of the police, that's what he was criticizing as being bourgeois. Political had to change the title because they actually took his words out of context. He was talking about abolish. They were putting those words together. And there are a lot of other activists who are just very clear about it. They're like, we mean abolish. And they will say abolish, get rid of, just to be clear.
Right. So you think about it, John. Those people who are talking about abolish the police, I think those are the 1% people that Dawn is talking about, right? They want to get rid of the police so they can run ramshot through the community committing crimes.
No, that's not it, right? These are like serious.
Because here's the thing, John. Most people know that we need police, right? What we don't need is we don't need criminal police officers.
Right. We don't need abusive police officers.
Exactly. Right. That's not what we need. And I think that, one of the things the mayor said that his mother told him, said that she would not want, if she made a phone call and called because somebody was committing violence, she would want the police to come and do something about it, right? And so nobody wants to get rid of that. We just want to get rid of those police officers that are hitting people upside the head, that are planting guns and drugs and part of the culture. We don't want those folks. We want to abolish them. We want to get rid of them.
Well, right? and actually, the abolished police position is much more of a utopian position, right? Like some people are saying that they want to abolish the police now. Some people are saying that we need to work for communities of not having to need them, right? Like as in, like make it so that we are taking care of ourselves, policing ourselves, etc. So there are a lot of people who say it. But the reason why I asked the question is Don's doing the work, right? And there are activists who are actually getting things done that are changing people's lives. Like people may be alive because of the work that they do that might not have been alive had they not done that work. Or people might be free because of the work that they do who might not have been free had they not done that work. That's why I wanted to highlight her opinion on that.
Hey, Don, do you remember when the Nation of Islam used to police projects and so forth in the Black community? Do you remember that?
I apologize, sir. That was before my time.
I remember it. Yes, it was just before your time, Dawn. But yeah, I remember that.
But I hear really good things about it, and I would love to see the nation out there again. I would love to see the Black Panther Party out there on Wednesdays. Let's put the deacons and the deaconess out there on Thursdays. Let's set a schedule up for that same type of thought process, so we could police our own in that capacity.
Yeah. So
one of the things that I had to deal with when I ran the party in this area is that we had to do more work around the whole question of violence in the community than we had trying to beat up on and then back the police up. And now we were very much a part of backing the police up and getting out of our way to do that, right? But the problem that the community is facing, that's what they wanted us to deal with. And then
the
exactly
beauty
what
of
we
this
had to
time
do.
right here, Baba, is that's a phone call now. Like, hey, this is where we posted up at today to the police officers. Like, nope, we don't need y'all there. We just need y'all to know that this is what we're doing. We're not in the rain begging anymore. This is more of a call, like a grace call. And that's the beauty of having the police sit at the table with us as well. And all of the organizations, the community-based organizations, are recruiting. So if you know people that are trying to do this type of work and they have more of the passion of the New Black Panther Party, guess who sit at the table with us? The New Black Panther Party. If you have more of a community outcry type of vibe, the Newark Anti-Violence Coalition is recruiting. I think NCST is recruiting. So there's community organizations that's a part of this table that is looking to build the capacity of their individual organizations that really will give us more of a weight and validity within the work that we're doing.
So
Let me just try to put a pin on this though. Just trying to help this out, right? The thing that we need to come back to our basics. We fight for power.
Yes.
Not for justice, we fight for power. And when we have the true power that we need as the people, we control the police. See, it's about creating a mandate to control the police. Community control of the police is what we're moving to. Now, when we get to the folks want to have a real revolution in this country, then we do talk about something else. But on the way to that, the quest for obtaining power on the local level, on the state level, and wherever we can amass power, where we have the levels of the state at our disposal, we're supposed to be pulling those levels for community control of the police. Y'all understand what I'm trying to say?
Yes, sir.
Let me finish. Yeah, I want you to comment, Donna, but let me finish.
No, I wanted to read a comment. I want to finish
this. So back in the day, what was happening with the Nation of Islam, right? When there was violence was out of control in the projects and so forth, and and this was all over the country. Wasn't just, say Newark, it was in New York, it was in Chicago, it was in Philadelphia. And these brothers was doing such an excellent job at curbing violence and moving young people around so that young people were safe in the community, safe on the basketball court, and so forth. What happened, Sister Dawn, is that there was no political will for this. Right, because what was happening, and that's the difference with here in Newark with Mayor Baraka. There's political will, right, for him to move around money and take over a building, take part of the money from the police department, and begin to fund these organizations. Right, there's political will for that. There was no political will for that because they looked at the Nation of Islam, right, as a negative organization, although they were doing quality work, right. But they didn't want to fund them, right? They wanted them to go out and continue to do free work. But these brothers were being funded, right? And then the government came in and said, no, we're not going to pay for that. We want to be able to have them go out and continue to do free work. And so that's why that program ended. But it was a great program in terms of what they were doing, right? But it has to be political will, right? And so if you create this model that with all of these organizations and you got all these conscious brothers that are going to the community, think about what Haki Madhubuti just said to us, right? Part of what's wrong with us is that, and I'm saying us as Black people, is that, we have never really done the kind of work that requires the kind of self-care for us to love each other, right? And because we have never really gotten to that point, that's why we have all of these organizations that we have that are so fractured. That's why I asked you the question, how do they, when they all come together, are they coming together in unity about how do we work together? And then, of course, how do we solve the problems? I got tremendous amount of respect for you when you said, you clearly know where y'all going, right? And you didn't let John push you back. Great, right? Because part of getting to where you're going, you got to know where you're going, right? And yeah, there's going, and that's why Haki Madhubuti used the word struggle. Whenever I communicate with that brother, at the end of his writings, he always say, keep struggling, because we have to struggle with one another. And that if we don't understand that in order for us to get to where we got to go, we've got to continue to struggle. From my standpoint, when I don't believe in abolishing the police. I believe that we need the police. I just happen to believe that at the end of the day, we need to put the like-minded and right-minded people on that department in order to do what's right by our people.
I just wanted to read a resident from Orange said, I like the police to be restructured, to be more friendly to the community. If abolished, the police, what will we put in their place? And then she also asked, did Camden change their police department? And then actually Camden actually did away, but then they rebuilt it back up. But she did ask the question that she just wants them to be more friendly to the community. And I think that's what you're saying, Dawn, that there's checks and balances, and they know that they have to be accountable.
Yes, ma'am. Yes, ma'am. I know one of the great things that, as the brother mentioned, we have a mayor that doesn't, he's with a good idea. If it's a good idea and you can see it through and understand your end goal and know that this is about our freedom and our liberation and coming, and we're still like you just said, we still in a struggle. I think that we're bound for success, right? Like I tell my daughters all the time, man, you ain't gonna complain about keeping the house clean that's ours. You're not picking cotton, sis. Like you don't have room. You're not gonna complain about being online learning when a couple of generations ago they couldn't learn. So suck it up and do what you gotta do. You gotta look at each other as brothers and sisters.
And one thing I would like to just throw in, and Don, maybe you have some opinions about this. I'm not sure, but a lot of people always put out Camden as a model reform, but I always push back against that. Like when they talk about it, because Camden did get rid of its they restructured its police department from the top down, but it was part of something that was state mandated, right? Like, so I don't know how much community control was there. I don't necessarily there were a lot of complaints about increased surveillance. There are a lot of complaints that it was a state-based, top down, not community up kind of reform that really wasn't reform. It really was just restructuring so that people actually had less power as a result of that. So a lot of people throw out Camden because they really got rid of their police department, but that might have been, I'm not sure, but it might have been just to get rid of their pensions and to like as a financial liability thing. But from everything I'm hearing down there, it wasn't, and Zayid might want to add to that, it wasn't necessarily like positive. It's not what you were doing. It's not what you were doing. It's not what Newark is doing, right? Newark is bottom up, community type initiatives. That seems top down and the state imposing its will on the community of Camden.
That was an economic regional restructuring from the top down. It was not driven by popular reform from the streets or from a federal consent decree or none of that. That was a redirection of some resources to create a wider force in the greater Camden area, right? Instead of the former police force, because that's how they just wanted to manage that from a financial and from a budgetary standpoint. It had nothing to do with fundamental reform of the police. It had nothing to do with that at all. So in that sense, you're absolutely right. What we have here, we have a police department being forced to behave itself because the people in the streets of Newark from the mid 1960s, turning it up to when we had the previous man who exercised no control of the police, all due respect to him, right? And made things worse. We demanded some things to happen, and that brought the federal government in here that mandated certain reforms under the watch of a federal judge, And then with that opening, we created those other spaces that translated into this reallocation of certain resources to do all those things that the police were doing terribly, brutally, and in a racist and corrupt way that nobody want. Right? So our situation is totally different, and you were right to give that pushback on that. And we ain't finished.
We ain't done.
Now, I know that we are like have been like way over time, and Don, we know you are busy, and we want to respect your time because we know you multitask, and we'd love to have you around as well. But we want to make sure that we definitely respect your time. Is there anything that you would like to say in terms of like, well, first we're gonna have to have you back because like you do so much, and you're full of like really good practical knowledge about how to change things from the ground up and how to build coalitions of diverse groups of people and work together. And we got to ask you about all that.
Thank you.
But we're going to have you like, just anything else that you'd like to add while answering the question that you've asked before, you've answered before, and you know what that question is. Who's your favorite hip hop artist, individual or group, or maybe just who you're rocking right now?
This new hip hop give me a headache, so I'm definitely going to go back into the whole Nas. My children are so tired of it, but I'm sure they'll get over it. Classic Tupac. We're listening to a little bit of J. Cole. Yeah.
Okay. All right. Sounds good. Good.
Well, John, let me just say you're going to have Dawn back because I know, was it about last December this time I opened my Essence magazine and they were highlighting everybody that went to Ghana. And I was like, wait a minute. Is that Dawn in that picture? So we have to have her back and talk to us about her trip to Ghana too.
Yes, ma'am. A life-changing experience.
All right. So that's good. And especially because actually after this COVID is up, right? I'm gonna be on a plane. So thank you. We're gonna have to talk about that as well. So thank you so much. We definitely appreciate having you out here and all the stuff.
Thank you for having me.
All the work that you do.
Very proud of you, sweetheart. You know that.
All right,
there you go. Brick City Collectors. You put it up.
And
you're on Facebook too,
right.
Brick City Collectors.
Absolutely. And Don, if you want to say some more words to stick around for the next part of this, more than welcome, because we're going into our next section, which is more like a retrospective of 2020. There's our last show of 2020. We wanted to end it with some friends that we're having some conversations with, right? So we brought on Dr. Kelly Harris he's the chair of Africana Studies at Seton Hall University. He is a dynamic, brilliant brother who actually, he really does. We love having him on the show because he gives a really good analysis. He gives the professors a Dr. Kelly Harris analysis of what's going on and what is his history. And he will tell us some more stuff about it that he will put it together with a good academic conversation that will help ground a lot of the stuff we say in a day where, in a years where we don't know what information is, where there's so much information that is clearly not real being passed around. We like having academics on who can ground us in facts, ground us in history, ground what we're doing. So
Dr. Kelly Harris is a scholar of the Black radical tradition.
Yes.
That's the grounding that we're talking about, right? He's a son of the struggle of the Black radical tradition, and that's the knowledge that we need to move our folks ahead, because we need the history of that movement to understand how movement work is done, how that's supposed to go, where that's supposed to go, what mistakes have to be learned for, and so forth and so on, and should be do.
Right, and doing that by actually talking about real history. So,
but Dawn, do you know Dr. Harris? Dawn, she's gone because Dr. Harris, did you know Dawn from the Board of Ed?
No,
yeah, because I think y'all because I know you've had Mayor Baraka on campus, and did you hear some of the conversation she was so? I'm sure there'll be a table that even if for one time you would like to be at that table, just knowing you. We got to make you go to that table, sir. You know, I like make you do stuff.
Well, I mean, I like the grounding and the resource and the intellectual backing that you have with everything you do. So welcome. Thank you for coming on, and welcome again, Dr. Harris.
Thank you. It's good to see y'all. It's good to be here.
So, Dr. Harris, man, it's 2020. We're getting ready to end this year. Yo, what are we leaving behind?
Did he know who our first guest was? We had Chicago in the house, and we closing out with Chicago. Did you know we had Chicago?
Who was the first guest from Chicago?
Oh, Haki Madhubuti.
Oh, Baba Haki was over here.
Yes, he was. Yes, he was.
Oh.
Kelly's from Philly, though. I want that.
But his heart, he has heart in Chicago, though. Yeah.
I'm gonna get him. I'm gonna get him because he should have told me he's gonna be on here. I'm gonna get him, and y'all should have told me.
My bad.
He is one of the most chameleon, hard to get elders in our movement. You know that too, if you know how.
I could have got him easy for y'all.
All right, because you know that's right. That's right. Dr. Kelly was like, "Yo, you don't know who I. Do you know who I am? I live in these black streets."
Baba Haki, man, he's always helped me out from the time I set foot in Chicago, you know. So I really appreciate him, man. That's a good brother, man. Salt of the earth. Him and his wife Safisha, you know, they've been doing a lot of good work with their education, with their Positive Institute of Education for years. His third world.
And I didn't catch Dr. Harris. He said she's president-elect. Did you recall what he said, Ed? He said his wife is president-elect, and I didn't hear the national education, but I didn't hear the rest.
Yeah, I forget the name of the organization, but she sure is. But you know, well, I'm not going to. Well, I guess I could say, you know, Dr. Ty Burrows is in conversation with Third World Press right now, publishing some stuff. So. Yeah, I'm glad y'all had him on, man. I wish I gotta give him a shout out. I
would love for them to do one of my volumes. In fact, you know, I was really touched by what the book that he's got coming out, because I have a manuscript, some of my creative stuff called "I Want to Talk About You," and it's a volume of poetry dedicated to the Black women that raised me. And I Want to Talk About You, my praise song for Asada, but that's a whole volume, all those community mothers, right? My Black female teachers, right? Some of the women that actually, you know, said they loved me once upon a time. There's a few of them too, you know, right? But it's you know, and I'm saying that to say this too, that one of the things I want us to appreciate is that one of the important dimensions of the activism of this moment is that, you know, the feminine principle, right? Feminine energy, right? We're not just talking about Black women leading marches and leading protests and being heads of organization. But there's a feminine energy when you're talking about, you know, taking down military structures, right, without killing somebody. You understand? That's feminine energy. When you're talking about, you know, creating structures so people can heal from the trauma of violence in the street and the trauma of having been incarcerated and all of that. That's the feminine principle coming forward. You know, so it's in that spirit. You know, that book, and he's always had that energy. Haki has consistently over the years been one of the few male leaders that has had that energy, right? And that's the piece that ultimately needs to be appreciated when we talk about, you know, as we're just a month away from Dr. King's birthday. You know, the question of nonviolent direct action is feminine energy, right? The Montgomery bus boycott, withdrawal from an entity that was sucking your blood, but bring it to his knees without firing a single. That's feminine energy, right? That's feminine energy, right? And so, and in the end, it's feminine energy that's going to clean up the environment, that's going to save the earth and show us what peace really looks like.
And he was mentored by some heavyweights.
Yeah,
the book ain't no joke.
He named it.
So you have the book, Dr. Harris?
It's taught by women, yeah.
And then and he read a couple of parts from that book, but where we left off, I asked Ed if he could bring him back just because he's in Chicago, and Chicago's closing out the year with this situation going on. And one of the things that's one of the things that's interesting is that how Mayor Lightfoot had to step back and kind of I don't know, eat some of her words. She said, because at first she said she didn't know, and maybe she didn't know, but it just passed her. And how, and what they wanted to be dismissive of how she felt in putting herself in that position, that could have been me type of thing. And just knowing, but just to hear that sister's, her testimony about what happened, and even to see, and even we just heard Dawn talk about some of the things, and one of the things I immediately thought about, it was not one police officer who could say, stop everybody, go back out, let me grab a cover. I mean, they really stood there and filmed her naked for a period of time, and I know it has to
half hour.
And it has to be deep, because this is a sister who's a social worker, I believe. And just to think,
her name is Anjanette Young. Yeah. It happened 2 years ago, and the police tried to cover up that video from coming out.
But the whole thing of her being a social worker who deal with things, it's just it was just horrible, and just to think, like police officers that were they all male, they got mothers, sisters, that they just sat there and filmed. Like, I mean, it was just horrible. And just,
but what that comes down to, though, Donna, it comes down to Black women having no humanity, right? And there was a Black police officer who was there,
part of that team. That's right.
He was there, and I think that's what we have to deal with as Black folk, right? And when we talk about where Black women are in this country, part of that we have to take responsibility for that, right? So when you think about hip hop music and you think about the degradation of Black women and calling Black women out of their names, right? And think about these police officers. Most of them are in their 30s or 40s, right? So they're hearing that music too. And when they hang around other police officers, well, what is it that the other police officers are saying about Black women? Right, and if they hear that, and think about what Haki Madhubuti was saying just now, when he said, he broke some news when he said that, he's talking to Amina Baraka about putting out her stuff, right? Most people have never read her stuff, don't know about her stuff like that, right? But it's about celebrating our women, and we've got to get back to that, right? Because that level of responsibility and God's model for taking care of our families, right? We don't have that. We don't teach that to our sons. You really only learn this kind of stuff in the Nation of Islam, right? God's model, the man, the woman on the man's shoulder, and the children on the woman's shoulder. Why? Because when this enemy comes, right, he should be dealing with you, and you should be dealing with him. He should never get that close to your woman and get that close to your children. But if you don't have that kind of knowledge, that kind of information, right, what happens is that, these cats can bust into the wrong door, and not only can they kill your wife, but they can bust into the wrong door and leave your mother standing there naked, right, because they don't believe she has any humanity.
And there's a local twist to this too that I want to appreciate too. Hold on a second, Donna. There's a local piece that I want. Right, the People's Organization for Progress. Right, 2000 we had Esme Parchment, a grandmother who went through the same thing right here in East Orange. Right, and by the way, when we ran McCarthy, the police director that we had under Booker Adenor, where did he go? He went to Chicago. And he didn't do anything to make that any better. He added to their corruption of cover-up that is so basic to how they get down in Chicago, how we got down in Newark previously, how we got down in New York, and how police tend to operate all over the country. So I mean, this is local dimensions too. And then the other thing, I mean, that situation was a breath away from that woman being killed. She just moved the wrong way. They would have taken her out of here. We would have had another
Breonna Taylor.
No. I'm talking about Detroit. A young child that got killed in Detroit several years ago. Breonna Taylor was just this past year. Aiyana Jones, right? A sister that got killed in Harlem, same type of thing. A no-knock warrant. She had a heart attack and died on the spot because she didn't know what the hell was going on. Right? Alberta Sproul, right? And then we have Breonna Taylor. We just say, we appreciate the noise that was generated around Breonna Taylor. Do you know we're just a few months away from the anniversary of that daughter being slaughtered? We're just a few months away from the year anniversary of that, right? So I just wanted to understand that the local piece too. It's not an isolated thing for Chicago. That's a particular thing that has to do with the violence that is aimed toward our community with corrupt, racialized policing, and the violence that tends to get isolated and not hyped up, not brought to the forefront of our attention in terms of the public, in terms of the media, that comes particularly at Black and brown women.
Can I say something real quick?
And but okay, I just wanted to ask Ed, I'm done. I just wanted to say, Ed, you gave an illustration, and if we just changed that illustration to a white woman, everything would have been different. Do you agree?
Oh, without a doubt. I think that if they'd bust in the door and that was a white woman, they would, especially if a black cop had been around them, they'd have ran immediately to go get her something to cover herself. Right? She got humanity, right? But I'm saying that we have to accept the responsibility as Black men for our women not having any humanity, right? Because that's how we running around. I mean, think about Haki Madhubuti, what he said. He said that he can tell, your level of Black consciousness if he come into your house. If you, what kind of music you listen to? Do you have a library? What kind of pictures you got on the wall, right? I mean, think about that. So if you thinking about, young brothers riding around in their car, what kind of music are they listening to? I got a chop in my car, or this bitch, this hoe. Right, we got conscious brothers and sisters who got children that are making music that are denigrating and degrading Black women. I don't even want to call their names, but if I told y'all who they were, it would shock you, because their kids just had new music come out, and the music is disgusting.
And I think that these complications, these conversations about music and culture, they're layered, they're complicated, right? Like I think that there's a generally dehumanization that exists within our community. I think that when you get the level of over policing that happens, like policing people who you don't think have any humanity, I think that you get a lot of this, right? Like you get the woman in Atlanta who gets shot in her Atiana, who gets shot in her home, just sitting there, right? But what are the police doing? The police are trying to find, some Black man to incarcerate. When you look at Breonna Taylor, the no-knock warrant is because they were trying to find some Black man to lock up, right? And they come for us, and they come through them because they don't really respect any of our humanities. I really like the way I look at this is these are questions about the lack of humanity that Black people have, and it translates easily into like all the police violence against Black men and the violence, the vileness that they treat Black women with, right? Like because it is not like it is like they look at us in that same way, right? So Black women might be murdered less, right? Like in terms of lower numbers. And, but it is the same type of look of, hey, we are, you need to be put away. Y'all need to be destroyed. Y'all are dangerous and threats. And if they're around you, if they're around communities that you are in, they are also dangerous. They are also a threat.
And I apologize. I cut Dr. Harris off. I had just wanted to continue that thought. So I apologize, Dr. Harris.
Yeah, you meant to do it. It's all right. But listen, I was thinking about Brother Ed was talking earlier about the Nation of Islam and what they used to do, and going into the projects and offering security. I want to take this back to Haki, and I don't know if he talked about it. But you all know when Minister Farrakhan started the Nation of Islam back up, when he broke from War of Deen, when he went back to Chicago, Haki was the one that hosted him and opened Chicago up for him. Haki called a meeting at his house and had Minister Farrakhan there and brought in the other Black leaders to help assist Minister Farrakhan get it started again. And then not only that, when Minister Farrakhan had to go throughout the South, he didn't have no security. He didn't have security like he have now. He didn't have a group of people with him. Attorney Lou Myers, who just died a few years ago. Brother Lou Myers, who was one of the attorneys for Assata Shakur, went with Minister Farrakhan throughout the South, particularly like Mississippi, the Deep South. And Lou used to, and I asked Lou, I said, well, who was the security? Lou said, I had a gun.
Wow.
Yeah. Yeah. So it's real interesting, so you had a lot of the Brother Ed was talking earlier about unity and working together. You know, back then, this is 1980. This is 1980, 81. You had black people who, even though they weren't in the nation, even though they weren't, you know, they weren't Muslim, that they were still willing to work with Minister Farrakhan and work through some things. And I asked Baba Haki, I said, well, did y'all deal with because I know Baba loved Malcolm X. I'm like, did y'all deal with the Malcolm piece? How did y'all deal with that? He's like, yes, we had that. That's the first question we asked them. You know, and they had a real honest conversation with him about his role with the Malcolm X piece.
Oh,
so,
that's
you know, that's
a show in and of itself, man.
Next time y'all,
that's a whole show.
Next time y'all bring him back, y'all got to ask him to talk about that.
Yes, it is.
Wow.
So
You gotta have him here.
So here's what's interesting about what the Brother Harris just said. So when I went down to Baltimore to interview Ben Chavis when he was the president at the NAACP, and at that time he and Brother Lou Myers were running the NAACP. So what Brother Harris just shared is absolutely true. Lou Myers told me that story, Brother Harris, when I went down there. He told me that when he came to Newark, when he found out I was from Newark, he said, brother, he said, y'all don't play in Newark. He said, when Minister Farrakhan came to speak the first time in Newark, when he was rebuilding the Nation of Islam, he told me that when he came to the Robert Treat Hotel, he said, them Muslims in Newark, brother, told us that if Minister Farrakhan came to Newark, he said we would kill him. And Farrakhan didn't have no security. Lou Myers said, I'm the lawyer, and Farrakhan gonna ask me to stand security against all them, you know what, in Newark.
That's right. That's right.
And he said, brother, brother, I didn't think we were gonna make it out of there, brother. He said, them brothers were serious in Newark, brother.
Hey,
you know.
Lou used to carry a Bible with a false bottom.
Yeah, so that story you tell, brother, is absolutely true, man. I think that hearing Lou Myers tell that story. The problem is, and here we go again, John. See, Brother Harris. The problem is Lou Myers is now transitioned, right?
Right.
And those stories are nowhere
Right.
written down, nowhere, brother.
You know what? I saw Lou when he was in the hospital, and I saw him right when he got out of surgery. And he came out of surgery okay. We thought he was going to make it. And the last thing Lou told me, he said, "Man, I got so much to tell you." And see, Lou used to work at Chicago State with me, so we used to chop it up all the time. And it's some stories he told me that I can't share.
Right.
But he had a lot to say, and he said he wanted to get his stuff down. There's this one brother in Chicago who did some interviews with him. Let me see if I can get the video of it, who interviewed Lou and got some of those stories down. But Lou was in the process of always talking about he's going to do his memoirs. He got to write it down. He got to do all that. But, I saw him in the hospital on a Friday. The next Friday, he died. And which shocked us all. We didn't think he was going to die. We thought he was going to come up out of it. But I want to share this one story with Lou, about Lou, that I can share that's interesting. It's about when he was with Assata Shakur. And Ed, you might know this story too. When Assata was convicted, Lou was the only lawyer, was the first lawyer that she wanted to see, that she allowed to come see her. Lou got drunk when he went to go see her because Lou was so mad and disappointed that they didn't get her off. So Lou said he went up in there, drunk, all drunk, and he was so sad. He said he's darn near crying.
I know the story. Go ahead and tell it.
And Assata was calming him down. And Lou was like, she must have lost her mind. Because
let me finish the story.
How is she so
cool
when she just, they just threw the book at her. He's like, what's going on? And he said, Assata reached across the table, patted him on the hand. She said, brother, don't worry. I'm getting out of here.
I'm getting out of here. That's right. That's right.
She told him.
That's right.
And Lou said, and Lou said it was months later. He was in California. I think I don't know how long it was later, but he was working on a case out in California and doing something. I don't know if it was Geronimo case, but Lou said he just got a phone call and all they said was, she's gone. and hung up. And Luce, like, he didn't know what they were talking about. He turned on the news and he saw it. Assata Shakur had escaped from maximum security prison. But, you know, and Lou knew more, but there's some things he couldn't tell. But the one interesting thing, too, that people need to know, too, I'm not going to mention his name. I ain't going to go there. But, and y'all know who I'm talking about. It's a cat who I don't know why we give leadership credence to, who was trying to find out where Assata was in Cuba.
And you talk about Sharpton behind. I'll call his name out.
Yeah.
Calling his name out for decades.
He was hitting
1988.
Hold up. Wait.
I'll tell you the story.
Did I miss this? Whoa. Hold up. You're saying that, wait.
Let me break it down for you.
Mr.
Right? I know we're supposed to be doing a year in review. Yeah,
don't start
on
this,
this.
man.
Bro, what you saying?
Zayid,
what happened?
It's real stuff.
Dr. Harris.
Yes.
We can save it for another time, but it's real stuff.
He was hitting up Chokwe Lumumba, trying to find out where Assata was in Cuba.
Ahmed. It was Ahmed Obafemi who we approached because it was in New York.
Wow.
To this?
Yeah, he's a police.
Wow. So wow. I mean, everybody just shut up. Everybody was like, oof.
And the community did not want to deal with it. And resources got put behind him from the state and from the Democratic Party that rehabilitated him. And now he's knocking people off a television. You know, he's the broker now. You know, I mean, see, there's the FBI informant, there's the FBI provocateur, and there's the front. See, Sharpton moved from all three of those motions. He went from being a bogus informant to a lousy provocateur, right? To becoming a front that is controlled by the state. All due respect, any toes that y'all know I'm stepping on.
Oof. All right, so that's wow.
That's real close to me. I don't bite my tongue
because it's like, you know, Zayid is saying it, and then Dr. Harris is like, no, actually, you know, this the name is Dr. Harris, and I document everything because I'm an academic, and this is.
Well, Dr. Harris, that's a good transition. What was that? The New York Times or the Wall Street Journals? You don't deliver babies, so should we call you Dr. Harris? You
know what? I appreciate being called doctor because my mom was like that. But you know, I was a black man before I was a doctor. You know, I wear my Philly credentials very proudly. You know, before we go any further, we calling you doctor because you're a black man right here, got a doctorate. You kick knowledge. We acknowledging that yes, you are Dr. Kelly Harris. People should see people like you with doctor next to their name, professor, know that your academic research is really hard-won, actual research. They read something you wrote. It is not like getting something on Facebook. It is not like getting something on YouTube. You are backed. Your research is vetted. Yes, I appreciate that. I just want I was born in college.
But you know what, Dr. Harris, I do appreciate. I know I was listening to different commentary, but when they did the etymology of the word, that is more academic than it is medical. That was the interesting part of
it. Yeah, but that was a sexist comment the guy made. That was a sexist comment.
And he didn't even have his doctorate, so it was also a haterish comment.
It's definitely haterish.
He was like, you got a BA talking about why you using doctor. Man, go back to school.
But you know, in
black women alone,
in our society, particularly on the right, people don't respect higher education.
Right.
And people don't respect the social sciences and the humanities. They really don't respect it. That's another reason why it's important to have Haki on there, because we all need to appreciate writing more, the power of writing, the power of poetry, the power of novels, the power of history and nonfiction. We all need to appreciate that because really when we look at it, when we look at really how we've come to so far, for Black folk, it's always been a connection between our activists and our scholars.
Yes.
Always, and we can't get anywhere without that connection.
And you know what's interesting, 2008, 2012, you had education leading the country, and then we went a different way, and now you're going back where there are educators that are back in leadership. And you just said that on the right that the humanities is not really respected, but one could say, quote unquote, the dumbing down of America over the last several years. And you're here to reflect, you know, on this past year and what do we look forward to? And, you know, in consideration of that, the bar is very low, so to speak. What do you know, what are some of the things that you're looking back as we go forward?
You know, it's very interesting because I think one of the things that's we're going to see that's going to be a real issue over the next few years is Black people's relationship to the Democratic Party, which I think is a good thing. Now, the reason I say that is,
You mean the incestuous relationship with the Democratic Party?
yeah, you know, and it's interesting. Biden didn't win if it wasn't for Black folks saved Biden, right?
That's right.
They saved him in South Carolina during the primaries, and they really saved him in this election. But we have to understand that there is a war in the Democratic Party between the progressives and people on the far left and the centrists and the moderates.
That's right.
And the holdovers, and this really comes back to the late 80s, to the mid 80s, when Jesse Jackson first ran for president.
Right.
Because the Democratic Party, and this is something we got to grapple with, and I don't think a lot of average Black folk really don't think about. The Democratic Party, when Reagan won, the Democratic Party, which you all well know, the Democratic Party moved to the right. And it moved away from its base of labor, Black people, women. You know, it moved away from that.
Led by William Jefferson.
And we're even now in a moment where the Democratic Party is still more neoliberal and is not really so. You know, so even though Black people won the election for Biden, what are we going to get out of it? And we're really going to find that contradiction is really going to hit the surface when he gets in office, and people are going to see that the progressive change that people want to see, by and large, is not going to happen.
Right.
With Biden in office or the Democratic Party. Democratic Party ain't with it.
But the question, and I agree with you, Brother Harris. But the question we would have to ask is that we all would agree that we had to do something about Trump and those people who were moving with him, right?
I agree.
So we all agree with that. The problem, I think, that you know we're going to have as a group of people, and the awakening that you're talking about is that those meetings are they going to happen or not happen? Because he's already selecting who he wants to meet with. You know, although I've heard some people say that he should have accepted the meeting to meet with some of the young Black leaders, but they're saying that that's going to happen, but it's going to happen once he gets sworn in. The issue I got with that, Brother Harris, is I just don't want a meeting for meeting's sake, right? I want a meeting where there's going to be some real legitimate policy changes coming, because what we see is that you see the older Black people, not the progressive Democrats. You see the older Black folks; they are jockeying for jobs and positions in the cabinet.
Yeah.
The young people are talking about they want policy change, right? And for instance, immediately when Haki came on the night, there were two things that he talked about before we even got into the nitty-gritty of a conversation with him. He talked about the total removal of student debt and the total removal of medical debt.
Yeah.
Right? We didn't even get into a real deep political conversation with him. But Biden is, and so Biden, as you know, he's not even committed to that.
No,
he's committed to. I think Brother Haki said 50,000. I think he was committed to 20,000.
Right.
And according to Brother Haki, what he said was, he said all this would require is he doesn't even need Senate approval, Brother Harris. He could do this with an executive order.
But you know what is interesting? And I know you all talked to Baba Haki about his relationship with Amiri Baraka.
Right.
Well, I'm assuming you all did.
We did. Right.
Okay. So we look back.
He was on with the mayor.
He was on with the mayor. Okay.
Right.
So you look back at that Black Arts Movement period. You look back at the Gary Convention piece. That whole window in the late 60s to the early 70s, you saw the transition from protest to politics. You saw the elevation of the electoral political leaders, and the slow marginalization of grassroots leadership.
Right.
Which for us is still problematic, and that really has hurt us and put us back when we look at what's happened to that, because we put too much. We allowed, and no offense to Sister Donna or any other elected officials, but we've allowed the elected official to become the voice of our communities. But oftentimes, many of them don't come out of the community. They don't come out of these grassroots organizations. They don't come out of that. They don't come out of that history of that struggle. Some do,
but isn't that
but many of them don't.
Like, isn't that like our fault in that in many of these predominantly Black cities, right, predominantly Black communities, if our politicians don't represent us, isn't that on us? Like, shouldn't we be running the people who are activists? Shouldn't we be like in Newark? Ras was the activist, right? He had an activist organization, right? We actually knew what he stood for going back, right? Like, it was very consistent in terms of bottom-up grassroots movements. We kind of knew that there were going to be a lot of bottom-up grassroots, community-based grassroots stuff going on. Not a lot of top-down, not a lot of DNC from down, from Washington, D.C. making policy. We kind of knew that based on his whole history, right? That, yeah, he would be able to talk to people in D.C., but he was going to be wedded first to people within the community. So it's a grassroots, bottom-up type of leadership. All communities seem, I mean, is it just me, or is it like, shouldn't that be the model that we all thinking about, right? Like how did it get to the point where people who get the people with the people power in many communities aren't the people who come from the activists?
And I think, John, go ahead, Dr. Harris.
Go ahead.
No, I would just say that for like a community like Orange, let's say, and we've talked about this, where there's over 17,000 voters, but 2,000 people decide the race. And I don't think it's that people are not engaged, but I think people are overwhelmed. And so if you're not, so one of the things that was a little different, it was that the fact that the ballots were delivered to the house, because it was almost voting at your kitchen table, but then there was no education process with it. So you did see more engagement, but you didn't have the whole full engagement. It was a reactionary thing and not a whole planned out in terms of voting and people understanding who they're voting for. So I think people want to know, they want to be engaged, but I think like in a community like ours, they're working 2 and 3 jobs, they barely got their head up to try to figure out what's up. And you just even heard Sister Dawn, listen, I'm doing this, I'm making dinner, I'm doing this. And that is pretty much our community. So we have to figure out how do we reach our community when it's like that we can get information to them in a way that they can receive it as well.
Well, the work that the sisters doing and other people on the ground, that work needs to be respected. And we need to lift them up and make sure that when the politicians are making statements or about policy or making decisions about policy, that there's certain people that need to be in conversation with them and not just money constituents. And I think that's what happens a lot, right? So,
like in Newark, it does seem like on every major policy issue, there are a lot of activists who've been activists for years, right? Who are a part of it, whether it be the CCRB, where you have People's Organization for Progress and the Ironbound Corporation. You have basically a lot of community organizations that have a history of community service who are at the table. And we heard the same thing tonight when Don was talking about the Brick City Collective.
Because Mayor Baraka is organizing as well. He understands the importance of organizing around issues and just not throwing an issue out there. And I put an article in here. Yesterday was a voting day at the state. You had a senator who is 20 years younger, over 20 years younger than Senator Rice, stand on the Senate floor and try to chastise him and told him he never did anything.
What?
Without and this, I mean, it almost at one point went to blows, but to that point, the Senate president had to stop it. Mike, if you can put that article up, but it was a serious event. But somebody who was born in 1968, told somebody that was born in 1945, you never did, and the insider had to go break down how Senator Rice went and served in the war, came back from that war, came back and served in the community, took kids, and he had to break it down. But this young person didn't know. And I think what Dr. Harris alluded to, it's a sense of arrogance that led that young man to think that he can do that. And it was horrible. And and I spoke to Senator Rice today, and wisdom, prevailed, and he stepped back, and but just to be, I don't even know from a sense of just talking to an older person that you would talk to them that way. And going back to even our first example of those police walking in that door, there's something missing where young people are just feel so entitled that they can just talk to people anyway, and then talk to people without information. That makes it that much worse. But
let's make it plain. The dude's name was Nick Scutari from Linden, and he was a Democrat too. He was another Democrat, but a young white boy resting on the laurels of white male racist privilege came out of his mouth and came at this elder wrong. That's ridiculous.
I was gonna ask, right?
Who they are.
I was gonna be like, yo, name names. Who was it? Thank you, Baba Zayid.
Y'all got me in here for something, right?
Yeah, and it's horrible. And while we're talking about Senator Rice, let's pause and say happy birthday to him. Today is his birthday. But to just, what I would just think, I know how I was brought up. I sat on the city council with a person that's probably Senator Rice's age, and even when we were in disagreement, it would almost bring me to tears because I could not kind of argue with her, because it was like arguing with my mother, you know what I'm saying? And it was really, really hard. But this lack of respect or disrespect is just going out, and it's from the top down, because as Brother Baba Zayid just said, it's a sense of entitlement that white young men think they can talk to anybody any way they want to and treat them that.
But I think that there are two different things that were being talked about, because we were talking about like the separation of the Black political class from Black activists all over the country, right? Like, and how that exists in many different places. I want you were originally speaking about this, Dr. Harris, in terms of like that separation. I think what you're talking about, Donna, is like people don't know what a lot of the Black elected political class have done, right? So it seems like there are two different things that are going on. There are a lot of things that members of the Black political class have done to advance lots of different things over the years. But there's also like this issue that you were talking about of there are many times this separation. So can you speak to that, like that contradiction?
Me?
Yes, sir, Dr. Harris.
Dr. Harris, yes.
Okay, but John, you made a good point though earlier. I want to get back to real quick. Because your point about Mayor Baraka and how things go in Newark, and with grassroots organizations working with the politicians on policy issues, that again is because Mayor Baraka comes out of that tradition. He connected to that tradition, and a lot of politicians today. So I think he's rare in the sense of what happened. But this disconnect happens too, I think, because when you look at the values that we have collectively, things have changed. So when we look at Malcolm, when we look at and forgive me for naming individuals because the movement was never about individuals, but I'm naming individuals just for reference.
Because we know they represent other people as well. They represent whole communities, right? They were forefronts of movements.
When we look at Malcolm, when we look at Dr. King, when we look at Paul Robeson, we look at Du Bois, we look at Ella Baker, we look at Fannie Lou Hamer, we look at Angela Davis, we look at the movements from the 1940s and the 1950s, William Patterson charging genocide. We look at the human rights piece. There was
it was the anniversary.
Right. There was a commitment really to radical change. There was a commitment. And the times I've been on here the last few times, we've always had to talk about COINTELPRO and it's not a small thing, because of the impact that it had on decimating that radical part of our movement and allowing a more moderate and part of our movement to take hold, where those people who are more engaged with really helping to maintain the status quo of America and are not really about radical change. Now, I'm clear on this. There's no way we are ever going to get the kind of change we want without revolutionary change. It's just not going to happen. We can get small piecemeal reform here and there, but we're not going to get revolutionary change if we don't advocate for it, if we don't push for it.
Right.
And you have an elite class, a petty bourgeoisie, who are willing to take crumbs and not push a revolutionary line. And Jim Clyburn is one of them. Right? Jim Clyburn is a perfect example of that. Al Sharpton is a perfect example of that. Right? People who are willing to push a moderate.
Sharpton is the COINTELPRO example of that.
They are, yeah, and they're not just so far that they're going to go. Right? But you had somebody like Dr. King at the end of his life. He said his last planned speech was "Why America May Go to Hell." And that's something that we have to really go back and deal with and understand why Dr. King would say it. Now, if Reverend Wright said it today, people would be like, they could be all over him. But Dr. King said it.
Well, they were all over Dr. King at the time, too. He was not very popular when he died.
He wasn't very popular. He wasn't even very popular in the movement with his own peers because, again, they wanted to do more electoral stuff. They followed, Bayard Rustin wrote in 1965, an essay From Protest to Politics.
That's it. That was the turning point.
That was the turning point. And he said,
to move away from protest and to focus squarely on electoral politics.
That's right.
As if one had to be done without the other.
That's right. And him and Dr. King kind of split over that, because Dr. King was really pushing the line of protest, which again, why he focused on the Poor People's Campaign at the end of his life. But to Dr. King, and you know what? There's going to be a book coming out soon. I can't wait till he's finished. Y'all should have Claiborne Carson on here. Claiborne Carson, who has written about Dr. King, he's written the FBI files, Malcolm X stuff. He's doing a book on Coretta Scott King. But Claiborne Carson is going through all their letters and all that kind of stuff. Because Claiborne Carson is over the King Center at Stanford University. But he shows the letters, of course, where Dr. King and his wife, when they were writing love letters to each other, they talking about socialism. They talking about the capitalist system is limited.
In the early 50s when they were in college.
Wow.
That's right. That's right. And people got to go back and
understand by the way, is a SNCC veteran who became a professional scholar afterwards, and he's done some very important scholarship work that Dr. Harris is laying out.
Yeah, and y'all should have him on here, because that would be a great way to, maybe in January, the great way to celebrate Dr. King and really grapple with where he was at the end of his life, and his wife, because his wife was very progressive. One could argue that she was in front of Dr. King in many ways. She came out against the Vietnam War before he did. So we got to grapple with that and grapple with that legacy, and that there was a concerted attempt to make people who are like Dr. King, to marginalize them and to keep that radical voice off, because they make people like us on here who believe in radical change, who believe in revolutionary change. They make us seem like we're crazy, right? And that's something that we really got to push back against. And our young people really don't. I'll give you an example. Maybe I shouldn't use it, but I'm gonna give this example. When I first came to Seton Hall a year ago, the first person I brought Chairman Fred Hampton first.
Right.
But right at that time, the other person I wanted to bring and just have a meeting with the black male students was Haki. And Haki said, brother, I'll be willing to do it. He said, I just want them to read my book. And he was talking about black men, obsolete, single, and dangerous.
Right.
But the young men at CR, many of them on some business, they want to be businessmen.
Entrepreneurs.
And they really don't, and that's where the work is coming in, trying to really reach these brothers. And that's why I asked Mayor Baraka to talk to them, to try to give them somebody that they could really, somebody they respect, but somebody they admire, to really talk to them about why it's important to really get down with not just business, but also the activist piece. But I wanted Haki to talk to him. And that Black Men, Obsolete, and Single and Dangerous book is still valuable.
Right.
It's still important. But a lot of our young, educated people, not just in college, but fresh out of college, they don't know nothing about that stuff and they don't read it. We grew up on stuff like that.
Now, I know that we were talking about, like, we're supposed to be talking about, like, what happened before and the 2020 year, but we are as always
out of time.
Yeah, we're out of time, and we will be continuing these conversations in the new year, and we do want to have you back on with Claiborne and Carson, so we'll talk about a date for that. And
Did you just see Jonathan? The audience said we too Democrat leaning, that they need Dr. Harris on here more because we too Democratic leaning.
Hey man, that makes sense, right? Because we always have to interrogate all of the stuff, including what our politics is at any given point, right? People mad at Ice Cube, but like, even though the way he went about it was wrong, I think that, like, as in made some mistakes, I think the general ethos of what he was trying to do, like, we can't just throw him under the bus for like that. So we want to have you back. We want to let's talk about having you and Claiborne Carson back. And I know that January 15th might be a good date if we could do it. So let's talk about more of that offline.
And remember, that's a Friday. But can I just ask one question? Because Ed's going to yell already.
That's right, because
I just want to say, Dr. Harris, what's the last word that you want to leave with young people? Because wisdom has told me, don't say it can't get worse, because it can always get worse. So what is something you would say that would kind of lead on faith and hope as our last show, sir?
We are strong people. I'm always optimistic. I'm not worried. We're gonna win this thing. We done came through a lot of stuff, and I actually want to end on, since y'all talk about the hip hop piece. Everybody go back and listen to YZ Thinking of a Master Plan.
That's a good way to end.
Listen to who? That's
YZ.
Oh, because that was Thinking of a Master Plan. I'm thinking of Rakim. I'm sorry.
All right. Well, thank you. Thank you so much for coming out. Thank you again for all the, every time you come on the show, it's good. We get to go back into that history. You bring out them facts. You bring out that scholarship, and you help us have the real conversation that we've been needing to have. So thank you for your enlightenment. Thank you for helping us end off 2020, which, it sucked, right? Oh, that sucked. But, we're going to look at 2021. So, thank you. And everybody else, just, since the last show of 2020, Zayid, Donna, Ed, final, and Rhino, if you're here, man, it's the final words for 2021. Just, as we ended off kind of concisely.
Love to my babies in the street that made the summer of 2020 one of the hottest of the last 50 years, and the lady died to get rid of that monster fascist in the White House. We end the year celebrating the matter of victory, gearing up for all that must be done as we move forward.
All right. Thank you. Donna?
Mike is putting something up for me right now. I just want to say this has been a challenging year, but some great things have come out of this year. If you have Netflix or access to Netflix, please go watch Ma Rainey's Bottom. Black Bottom is on tonight with Chadwick Boseman, his last acting. And the thing about it, I think that tells us a lot. On this set, this brother was going through everything that he was going through. Even some negative things came out, and then we didn't know until after he passed what he was going through. So as our first Baba Haki just said in the beginning, just keep pushing, keep pushing, keep pushing.
All right, and that's cool. I remember meeting August Wilson. That's it for another time and talk about that. Ed.
So I think that for me, I think that you know me, John. I'm kind of reflective. I like to look. I like to look back, but I like to do meditation in some of that. So that was interesting that Brother Haki talked about that. But what I would say is that for folks that have been riding with us on All Politics and Local for the last 11 years, I would say stay tuned for 12 because we got we got some new people that we're adding to the vote along with Midi Baraka and Conrad and Tamika Mallory. So we're gonna have Rakia Lumumba. She's dope. And then we got
the daughter of Chokwe Lumumba,
yep,
former mayor and sister of the now mayor Chokwe Antar Lumumba.
That's right. And then we got Monifa Bendelli, right? Mm-hmm. Two sisters with two dope ass names, right?
both of them children of the new African independence movement, and Monifa is a cover of the Black Panther Party.
And both of them are gonna bring fire, right?
Absolutely.
And I would say, John, you know, when I first talked to Rakia, and I talked to her about joining the show and doing in the show, and I said I haven't spoken to Monifa yet. Here's what she said, Zayid. She said, "Oh, you ain't even got to talk to her. She's doing the show." Right. So it's done. So I knew,
that's how they ride.
Yeah. So and I told Monifa that, right? Before she even said yes, I said, well, after she said yes, I said, I'm gonna tell you what your girl said. She said, "Oh, you're doing the show." She said, "She right. We're doing the show." You know. Right. So we're looking forward to that, John. I think that, next month, having them both on, and I think that, I'm gonna surprise them with a guest. I've just made some contacts with the sister who's the new host on MSNBC right now. So I'm gonna look to bring her on and surprise them.
Yeah, Cherry just said, "When is the show?"
Well, they probably listening now. You spoiled the surprise. I'm sorry.
No, it's all right. Jay was like, "When is the show going to be more bipartisan?" And I'm like, "Yo, we always try to get Republicans on, and I think we do what we do, right? Like, we are not wedded to the we criticize the Democratic Party quite a lot, quite a bit on this show." DJ Rhino, my brother.
Yo, Rhino, we missed the music tonight, my brother.
Yeah, man, my connection has been really bad, man. So I got to figure that out. But it was a good show, man. I stayed tuned through the whole thing, and yeah, it was great with Brother Haki. Good seeing him on here. I'm definitely a student of some of his books too. Mm. But yeah, and Brother Kelly Harris, man. We talked about you, man, having you for this last show. We talked about, who was somebody who was the most reoccurring person that's been on the show throughout the year, and we all said your name, you know what I'm saying? So I'm glad you were able to come through for the last joint, you know what I mean? Yeah, much love. But definitely my last words basically is just, stay focused and don't get soft, you know what I mean? Things about to get really real. You know what I mean? Things about to get really real. So just, stay focused because, things happen. We get our votes or whatever in and things happen for us. And, we start getting soft and think things are just going to work itself out. And it doesn't work like that. And we've seen that. We've learned that. So I think now we need to just stay on, man. Just stay on. Keep it going. Stay focused. Don't stop the resistance. You know what I'm saying? Keep doing what you're doing, everybody. You know what I mean? Let's keep going.
And before you just close out, I just want to remind next week, a week from today, is actually Christmas. This will probably be the only, we will not be airing live next week, but we will be here New Year's Day. So we have 1 week off, so we won't be here Christmas, but we will be here New Year's Day. So
Groggy is a very revolutionary day for African people, by the way.
Okay.
So what's your last words for the year, John?
Oh, you said what?
What's your last words for the year?
Oh man, just stay strong and just push out. 220 was tough, but 221 it's probably still going to be tough, but I think it's going to be better, man. We are. I think we're going to be stronger and smarter and do the stuff that we need to do to move past. So yeah, I'm good. I like everybody else's comments, and I look forward to next year. You know, all politics are local. America's number one political hip hop radio talk show. It's been fun doing it this year, and this is the way. Actually, this program is self-care for me, right? Like, as in the conversations, me learning, me always learning from different people. Yeah, this is my form of self-care. So I'm looking forward to 221. I'm looking forward to the conversations we're going to have in 221. I'm looking forward to the different things that we're going to be doing in 221. It's going to be fire. It's going to be nice. So that's what I got to say.
I think Haki told us how important we were, right? How important this show is in terms of what we do. So I think that's affirmation. And I think what you just said also is affirmation, man.
Yeah.
Y'all also should have Reverend Jeremiah Wright on here.
Word. Absolutely. Yeah. We're gonna talk about that. Wow. All right, so I'm gonna sign off, and we're gonna continue a little bit of a conversation afterwards. But this is All Politics So Local, America's number one political hip hop radio talk show. Happy 220, 221. Stay safe.
Let's see the world.